He wrote a suicide note during his essay class, only to be ridiculed and humiliated in front of everyone by the bald teacher, and was even forced to strip naked and make a self-criticism before the entire school. After 3 years of bullying, Daejin had completely lost the will to live. On the verge of death, all he wanted was a final farewell with his family. But his older brother and sister treated him with the coldness of strangers. Daejin could only weep as he poured out his heart to his father, but to his surprise, he was cursed out again for blocking the TV. On the screen, a nationwide scandal of school bullying was being reported. A sophomore had brutally dismembered his 7 tormentors. When confronted by the media, the boy laughed wildly and said, "Those bullies. Killing them 10,000 times wouldn't be enough. If you're bullied too, and want to survive, then kill them." That sentence utterly shattered Daejin's fragile defenses. That night, he began searching online for ways to kill the thugs, then rummaged through the toolbox for a suitable weapon, practicing the motion of a headshot on his pillow again and again, vowing to make his tormentors live a living hell. But the next day, when he faced the school bully again, Daejin was still too frightened to even lift his head, let alone pull out the weapon he'd practiced with all night. Seeing Daejin's pent-up frustration, the school bully grabbed his collar and slapped him hard. But that wasn't enough. He then mixed a cup of dirty sock water, mud, and spit, and threatened Daejin to drink it in front of everyone. Daejin instinctively tried to refuse, but took another few slaps for his trouble. Just to survive, he forced himself to gulp it down, but the taste was so revolting, he vomited it all out as soon as it touched his lips. The school bully still wouldn't let him go, shoving beer into his mouth again and again. If this kept up, Daejin would really die. Finally pushed past his limit, he suddenly knocked the bottle away, desperate only to escape this hell. But he hadn't even taken a few steps before the bully grabbed him by the hair, dragging him back for another beating, even hauling him along the ground like a dog for dozens of meters. Then, at the corner, a truck suddenly came barreling around. Daejin's eyes snapped open, and with all his strength, he shoved the bully into the road. The speeding truck couldn't possibly stop in time, and Daejin, terrified, bolted from the scene, fleeing in panic. This worthless victim of 3 years of bullying had, because of a juvenile delinquent's words, turned his tormentor into a vegetable. Faced with the bully's mother's demand for massive compensation, his father didn't even look back, driving away, even cutting all ties with Daejin, and throwing him out of the house. Daejin had become a complete outcast, abandoned by his family. Yet those bastards who bullied him didn't let him go. Using the excuse of avenging the school tyrant, they surrounded him and beat him mercilessly. But Daejin, who had already lost everything, was no longer weak. He grabbed a brick from the ground, and swung it wildly at the nearest person, not stopping until his attacker collapsed. What followed, however, was an even more brutal assault. The pain was so intense it felt like his bones were being eaten away, yet it only made Daejin's will to fight back grow stronger. Unfortunately, he was outnumbered and quickly subdued. Even so, the determination in Daejin's eyes remained unbroken. The leader, seeing he wouldn't yield, swung a wooden stick straight at Daejin's eye. Just then, a man carrying instant noodles suddenly appeared. The bullies glanced over. It was a homeless man. They threatened him viciously, telling him to mind his own business and get lost. Instead, the man didn't say a word, and flung the noodles in their faces. Then, with a flying kick, he knocked one of them down. The rest of the gang were dispatched just as easily. Daejin was stunned by the man's strength, and immediately asked to learn how to fight from him, hoping to become just as strong. After finishing the instant noodles Daejin bought, the man refused his request. But Daejin wouldn't give up. For days, he trailed behind the man, secretly observing how he dealt with bullies. In truth, the man had noticed him all along. Finally moved by Daejin's persistence, he agreed to teach him how to fight, and help him get revenge. But there was one condition: he had to take down the guy in front of him first. This was the same school tyrant who had led the gang that beat him at the construction site a few days ago. While the tyrant was cursing at his lackeys, Daejin had already circled behind, ready to strike. Remembering all the bullying he'd endured, Daejin, burning with rage, launched a flying kick, and dumped a bucket of rancid garbage over the tyrant's head. He rushed forward, trying to knock him down. But the tyrant reacted quickly, knocking Daejin's hand away, and slammed him against the wall. In the next moment, though, the tyrant's expression changed dramatically, feeling a sudden cold, stabbing pain in his abdomen. He thought Daejin was bluffing, and clung to him tightly. But the hard object he felt made his heart race with fear. Daejin shouted triumphantly, "Come on, hit me harder if you can." The tyrant was so shaken by Daejin's madness, his body started trembling uncontrollably. Seizing the chance, Daejin kicked him to the ground, and pressed his attack. The tyrant's courage to resist was utterly crushed. He never dreamed he'd provoke someone this ruthless. But now, Mad Dog Daejin had already caught up and brought down a heavy chop right at his forehead. The school bully was struck so hard he couldn't fight back at all, then took another kick to the waist. At this point, the bully finally begged for mercy, apologizing over and over for his past bullying. But would an apology solve anything? Would he have ended up like this if that were the case? Daejin kicked him again. It's because of bastards like you that my high school years were filled with blood and tears. Do you know what it's like to tremble under your blanket every night? I wanted to end my life almost every single day. Countless painful memories surged up inside him, and in that brief pause, the bully seized his chance, flipped Daejin over, and pinned him down hard. Without a moment's hesitation, the bully raised his short knife and slashed at Daejin. But the blade stabbed into his thigh and did no harm at all. There was a steel ruler hidden under the newspaper. Fooled, the bully grew even angrier, landed a punch right on Daejin's face, then pinned him down and gave him a savage beating. Just then, a stream of urine was dumped over the bully's head. Hangul had stepped in to save Daejin again. He had been secretly watching Daejin all along. Reeking and furious, the bully leapt to his feet and charged at Hangul, only to be knocked to the ground by a high kick. Hangul strolled over to Daejin and said, "You lost. I can't teach you how to fight." Daejin heard this and cursed himself for being so stupid. At the crucial moment, he'd remembered being bullied, and lost to those guys all over again. Daejin shook with rage and helplessness. But Hangul found himself drawn to Daejin's determination, and asked, "Do you really want to get stronger that badly? Even if it means getting beaten half to death?" Daejin nodded firmly. "Alright, I'll give you one more chance." Hangul took Daejin to an unfamiliar neighborhood and told him that the truly dangerous people were outside of school. This was their turf. Daejin wondered why Hangul had brought him here. Hangul didn't explain. He just kicked him inside a house. Survive if you can. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Daejin completely bewildered. He was still thinking about Hangul's words, when he looked up and saw a gang of tough-looking men standing before him. They grilled him for a while and learned Hangul had brought him. Then Cha Daeyeop took him to get settled, which turned out to be a laundry room barely 2 square meters wide. Daejin hadn't even reacted yet when Daeyeop said, "If you want to stay, you have to work." The next day, Daejin took over all the housework. Life was tough, but he never complained. Because here, there was no school bullying, and he had food and shelter. But the moment he stepped outside, the dangers were 100 times greater than at school. Walk just a few steps, and you could run into a gang of thugs looking for trouble. Daejin always tried his best to avoid them, but his timid demeanor still made him a target. A bald guy blocked his way, demanding he kowtow before he'd let him go. In that moment, Daejin finally understood. The real challenge was surviving in this nest of gangsters. The big man saw Daejin staying silent and was about to get physical. In the past, Daejin might have swallowed his anger, but now he was no longer afraid. He raised his fist, ready to fight back. Just as the thug was about to strike, his movement suddenly froze. Because Daeyeop showed up just in time. "What are you trying to do to my little brother?" Daeyeop didn't bother arguing. He just grabbed Daejin and left. The humiliated thug gnashed his teeth in anger. His own cronies tried to calm him down. "That guy's from the Hangul family. Just let it go." But in this world, nothing mattered more than pride. Unwilling to back down, the thug pulled out a knife and charged at Daeyeop. Daeyeop simply reached out, pushed off the ground, twisted his hips, and in an instant, the burly thug was thrown to the ground. Daeyeop's strength left Daejin dumbfounded. He was every bit as tough as Hangul. The rest of the gang scattered in fear on the spot. But after suffering such humiliation, the big man couldn't swallow his anger. He kept cursing, swearing to take down the Hangul family. Just then, a strange voice rang out. "Want to bring him down? I can help you, no strings attached." A few days later, Daeyeop and the others were already asleep. A man in a baseball cap quietly appeared outside the window. After making sure everyone inside was asleep, he twisted open the gas canister's valve and inserted the hose through the crack in the door. But just then, Daejin got up to use the bathroom. He smelled something strange in the air, and instantly woke up. Seeing the foam on Daeyeop and the others' lips, he finally realized what was happening. He rushed out at once and opened the front door to let the air in. By coincidence, as he dashed out, he knocked the man in the cap to the ground. Realizing he'd been discovered, the man took off running. Daejin didn't hesitate for a second and chased after him. He suddenly remembered what Daeyeop had once said to him: "As long as you take out this piece of trash, you'll prove yourself." But as soon as he caught up, the other man landed a punch that dislocated his jaw. His cover blown, he shouted out, realizing he had to get away immediately. Otherwise, that organization would surely come after him. In his panic, the man stumbled, lost his balance, and tumbled down the steps. Daejin grabbed him in one swift motion, hoping to force some intel about the organization from his mouth. But in the next instant, a sharp line of blood appeared across Daejin's cheek. The man sneered as he drew a knife. "You think I'm running because I'm afraid of you?" This reminded Daejin of the night the campus bully tried to escape. So this is what it feels like to be threatened at knife point. The thug immediately swung the blade at him. Daejin, unarmed, was driven back against the pile of trash. He snatched up a piece of foam board to shield himself, but it was useless. The knife plunged straight through, yet Daejin managed to block it barehanded. Once again, Daejin unleashed his mad dog mode, forcing the man back against the railing. The shift in momentum made the man's heart skip a beat. Daejin grabbed his arm, and with a move he'd learned from Dae-iop, tried to trip him up. But the two of them locked in place, neither giving an inch. The man couldn't help but mock him. With skills like that, you think you can take me down? Let me send you on your way instead. But Daejin suddenly burst out laughing. I never planned to take you down. Hearing this, the man's pupils contracted. He sensed something was wrong. In the next moment, Daejin braced his legs, and the two of them toppled over the railing together. Daejin actually chose to go down with him, clutching the man as they both rolled off the 30-meter-high platform. Bruised and battered, Daejin ignored the pain, grabbed a brick and smashed it down on his opponent, only relaxing when he saw the man finally lose consciousness. With his goal achieved, Daejin's strength gave out, and he collapsed to his knees. He had finally defeated the enemy he'd once been too afraid to face, his heart surging with exhilaration, and he vowed to make every piece of trash pay the price. But just then, he suddenly felt a hot rush in his abdomen. It turned out that knife had been driven deep into his waist. Daejin felt a wave of dizziness wash over his brain, and collapsed to the ground. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying in a hospital bed. It turned out Dae-iop and the others had arrived just in time to save Daejin. But the guy who'd set the gas trap had already vanished without a trace. Dae-iop patted Daejin on the shoulder and joked, "You didn't actually lose, did you? Don't try to fool us by saying you won." After this incident, everyone saw Daejin in a new light, and Hangul officially acknowledged him as one of their own. When Daejin was discharged from the hospital, the group pooled their money to throw him a welcome party. It was the happiest dinner Daejin had since leaving home. A few rounds of drinks in, everyone opened up their hearts. They admitted they each had their own struggles, and some didn't even have anyone at home to drive them away. So Dae-iop suggested that Daejin move in with the Hangul family for good. From then on, he became much closer to everyone, and he no longer held back when he spoke. Daejin noticed that these people, all about his age, were working odd jobs everywhere to support the family, while only he and Hangul spent their days with nothing to do. This made him feel a little guilty. But Hangul just thumped his chest and said, "You're the big brother now. With me around, you don't have to do anything." No sooner had he said this than Dae-iop kicked Daejin out the door, leaving him with just 3 words, "Go make money. Earn some cash, then take time to learn from everyone else." So Daejin got a job at a pizza shop. But if it wasn't the boss shouting at him, it was drunk customers hurling insults. He felt like quitting more than once. But just as he reached the door, he ran into the boss's daughter. They locked eyes at close range, and Daejin's mind went blank. The girl had striking eyebrows, big bright eyes, and a cherry red mouth. She was absolutely adorable. Daejin steeled himself and thought, I can tough it out a little longer. He had no idea that this girl would change his life forever. Meanwhile, Hangul wasn't sitting idle either, asking around everywhere for the guy who'd left the gas on. But Daejin was already completely captivated by Na Yoon. Once, he accidentally broke a plate, but Na Yoon didn't scold him. Instead, she helped him cover it up. Her sweet smile was even more endearing. Still, there were always difficult customers at the shop. One time, Na Yoon asked a customer not to smoke inside, and ended up getting scalded with a cup of hot coffee. Without hesitation, Daejin was ready to fight back, but the boss quickly held him back. Even Na Yoon lowered her head alongside her father, bowing and apologizing to the customer. Daejin was stunned, and demanded to know how the boss could put up with his own daughter being bullied. The boss just sighed and said, if you want to survive in this dog-eat-dog world, learning to swallow your pride is the most basic rule. Especially in this neighborhood overrun by gangs, too many shops have already been forced to close for good. At this point, the owner couldn't hold back his tears. If I weren't poor and uneducated, I wouldn't have dragged my family into this mess. Na Yoon chimed in, thank you for your concern, but I'm really fine. It's only because of this store that I even have the chance to go to school. Hearing this, Daejin felt deeply ashamed. They were the same age, yet Na Yoon was so much more mature. This incident had a profound impact on Daejin. Soon, Hangul began to train him. But Daejin was impatient, unsatisfied with the basic moves. He yearned to learn advanced fighting techniques. As a result, Hangul scolded him sternly. Unexpectedly, when Hangul made his move, Daejin dodged with ease. For a moment, both of them were stunned. Hangul threw another punch, and again, Daejin parried it effortlessly. Now Hangul's interest was fully piqued. Seeing Hangul get serious, Daejin quickly surrendered, admitting defeat. Meanwhile, in a warehouse on the outskirts of town, a group of thugs were beating up a man. Leading them was the burly Chun Gyeong. The one being beaten, trembling all over, was the same scoundrel who once tried to gas Hangul's house. After his attempted crime failed and his identity was exposed, Chun Gyeong was now at risk of punishment from his boss. His only option now was to find Hangul and take him out to make up for his mistake, so his men were searching everywhere for Hangul's whereabouts. The pizza shop had become one of their targets. Daejin had been introduced by Kim Taek, and the thugs thought they could get information about Kim Taek from the owner. Just then, Daejin saw Na Yoon and her father being bullied again, and he struggled internally, unsure whether to intervene. To make matters worse, the fat guy turned around and cursed at Daejin. On impulse, Daejin grabbed a wine bottle and smashed it over. He had finally found a reason he couldn't ignore. But to a 300-pound Hulk, scrawny Daejin was nothing more than a yapping little dog. He was all muscle, powerfully built. His size wasn't just from fat. That physical talent made him unbeatable at school, but the moment he stepped outside, Chun Gyung put him in his place. Kim Tae-young was completely speechless now. He just couldn't understand why he had to deal with such small fry. Daejin was also fooled by Kim Tae-young's size and mocked him outright, calling him an uncouth fat slob. Kim Tae-young's lips twitched at the words. The next second, he charged forward like a black bear. But Daejin no longer cowered. He calmly kicked over the stool beside him. Sure enough, this managed to block his opponent's advance. Daejin quickly assumed a textbook fighting stance, replaying Hangul's training in his mind. He shifted his weight, powering his hips with every step, and threw a textbook jab. He pushed off the ground, following up with a lightning-quick straight punch. This was the first time Daejin had ever put what he'd learned into real combat. Kim Tae-young was completely caught off guard by the sudden barrage. Daejin planted his foot and launched another right straight, aiming straight for Kim Tae-young's face. The sight made Na Yoon, watching from the side, gasp in shock. She never expected such explosive strength from this skinny teenager. But just as Daejin began to feel a surge of hope, the next moment, his pupils contracted in alarm. Kim Tae-young just scratched his head awkwardly, then counterattacked, swinging a fist at Daejin. Daejin quickly retreated, narrowly dodging what would have been a crushing blow from 500 pounds of force. This round, Daejin truly felt the gulf between their abilities. Now, all he could do was defend, waiting for a chance to strike back. But soon enough, Kim Tae-young drove Daejin into a corner. He grabbed Daejin by the collar, and his terrifying grip pulled Daejin's face out of shape. Yet, it was this brute force that seemed to really excite Kim Tae-young. He clamped both hands around Daejin's throat, lifting him clean off the ground. The feeling of suffocation surged to Daejin's head. Na Yoon, afraid it would end in tragedy, tried to intervene, but Kim Tae-young flung her aside with a single motion. Daejin was on the verge of losing consciousness, panic flooding him. Was he really doomed to be a failure? If he couldn't win by strength, then he'd have to win by mouth. He mustered all his saliva and spat right in Kim Tae-young's face. Blinded, Kim Tae-young finally let go. Daejin seized the moment to counter with a punch. He knew he couldn't win with fists alone, so he snatched up a bottle from nearby and smashed it at Kim Tae-young with all his might. Kim Tae-young recoiled in pain, and Daejin followed up with a rapid barrage of punches to keep up the assault. His frenzied attack startled Na Yoon, who hastily tried to intervene. Your hand is bleeding. You can't keep fighting. But with adrenaline surging, how could he care about that? All he wanted now was to take down the threat in front of him. It wasn't until the bottle shattered into pieces that Kim Tae-young finally collapsed to the ground, completely unresponsive. The murderous look in Daejin's eyes sent a chill down anyone's spine. He muttered under his breath, "I'll wipe out every last one of you scum." Then his body suddenly gave out, and he slumped to the floor. Just then, Kim Tae-young's backup arrived out of nowhere. Seeing Kim Tae-young motionless on the ground, they pointed angrily at the boss. "Was it you, old man?" On hearing this, Daejin pulled himself up again and shielded the two behind him. His fearless stance struck Na Yoon right to the heart. "Come on, if you've got the guts, all of you at once." The short-haired guy, seeing Daejin's crazed look, couldn't help but curse, only to be knocked out by a single punch the very next moment. Daejin's eyes were vacant as he stared ahead. Turns out Kim Taek had arrived just in time. Daejin hurriedly asked, "What are you doing here?" Kim Taek calmly tightened his ponytail, and replied coolly, "Leave the rest to me." Kim Taek of the Hangul family was born a fighting prodigy. Every time he made a move, it was to satisfy that inner thirst for blood. He was usually taciturn and silent, but once the fight began, his strikes were lethal, swift and decisive. That contrast was always soul-shaking in its intensity. His seemingly casual spinning side kick could instantly take down a 2-meter-tall brute. After that, Kim Taek would patiently interrogate his captives. "Were you the ones who rigged the gas?" Looking at Kim Taek's fist, the other guy couldn't stop shaking, and trembling, he gave up their boss, Chun Gi-hung. And the final step in dealing with this kind of scum was the fatal blow once they were of no more use. Sure enough, it had been that gang of Higuang punks behind it all. Still confused, Daejin thought back to that day and couldn't help but ask, what exactly is Higuang? Kim Taek stopped hiding things, and slowly began to recount the history of the neighborhood. This is a gray zone long abandoned by the police. At first, numerous gangs gathered here, committing every imaginable crime. Are these people gang members too? No, they were driven out by another organization long ago. That organization is called Higuang. They inherited the original gang's ways of operating. The most notorious figure in Higuang is the mastermind behind this incident, Chun Gyeong. They once tried to take over this district, but every time they were pushed back by the Hangul family. That's why the businesses on this street have been able to survive. But at this moment, the boss revealed the truth. In reality, all these years, everyone has been paying protection money to Chun Gyeong. Kim Taek was incredulous when he heard this. Why didn't anyone ever tell me? Because those people have no bottom line whatsoever. When someone refused to pay at first, their shop was burned to the ground in the middle of the night. A lifetime's work, gone up in smoke overnight. The owner couldn't take the blow and lost his mind. That's why I don't want you to get mixed up with those people. Kim Taek listened, grinding his teeth in anger. And something shifted inside Daejin as well. He had always been a pushover, bullied by others, but now, he wanted to protect those around him from harm. There will always be scum in this world. They take root in schools and grow strong in society. At this moment, Kim Taek immediately contacted Dae-iop. Chun Gyeong's appearance put the Hangul family on high alert. But just then, Dae-iop was stunned by what he saw nearby. He never imagined Higuang would be so brazen. In broad daylight, they dared to openly smash, loot, and rob. Seeing the elderly woman and child crying on the ground, he hurriedly hung up on Kim Taek. But this gang, lacking any shred of decency, only grew more excited by the despair of the weak. When the victims didn't hand over money, they prepared to use real violence. Thankfully, at the critical moment, Dae-iop intervened. The Hangul family had always been decisive. He landed a heavy punch right away. The other side, relying on their numbers, started shouting threats, even invoking Higuang to intimidate Dae-iop. Higuang? I don't care if you're Higuang. Remember this. I'm your daddy. With just a few blows, Cha Dae-iop sent several of them sprawling to the ground. But just as he turned to check on the elderly woman, a heavy blow struck him from behind. All of a sudden, blood sprayed everywhere, and the searing pain forced him to his knees, screaming in agony. It was Chun Gyeong, who had arrived with reinforcements. Just a lapdog of the Hangul family, aren't you? Screw you. You're the real lapdog here. At that moment, people from the Hangul family also arrived at the scene. Gyeong suggested they should leave right away. There was no need to make an enemy of Higuang over a pizza shop. But Kim Taek's reasoning was so ridiculous it was almost laughable. That pizza is really delicious. If the place shuts down, we'll never get to eat it again. Even more absurdly, Seongbin nodded along in total agreement. Hearing this, Gyeong couldn't help but curse out the two brothers. Just then, all four of their phones rang at the same time. It was a text from Dae-iop, and what it said made their pupils contract in shock. Dae-iop was shown with his hands tied, covered in blood. Immediately after, they received another message with an address. Gyeong stared at Dae-iop's image on the screen, her eyes blazing with fury. At that moment, Dae-iop was being tortured at Chun Gyeong's whim. Do you really think those friends of yours will come to save you? But Dae-iop responded calmly. If they don't show up in 10 minutes, just kill me. At least you'll save them some rations. Still acting tough when you're about to die. Just then, four figures slowly walked in. The Higuang organization was formidable, but if they dared touch a member of the Hangul family, they could be wiped out all the same. Feeling sure of victory, Chun Gyeong began to taunt them. Without Hangul backing you, you're nothing but a bunch of punks. Kim Taek was so enraged, he wanted to skin him alive. But Gyeong reeled him back with a single sentence. Don't listen to that bearded fool's nonsense. Just looking at him makes me sick. Seeing he couldn't win the war of words, Chun Gyeong barked an order, and a group of burly men rushed forward, weapons in hand. Watching Kim Taek and Seongbin charge straight into a mob of over 100, Daejin was once again awed by their fighting prowess. Every time, they managed to leave a different kind of impact. Kim Taek powered up with both his right hand and foot, kicking three burly men to the ground in a single blow. This was the strength of the Hangul family. Seongbin took advantage of a missed punch from the enemy, ducked, slipped past, and in a few quick steps, circled around to the front. A series of relentless blows left their opponents utterly subdued. The Hangul family wasn't just relying on Hangul to hold the fort. Realizing they couldn't win head-on, the enemy turned their sights to Gyeong at the rear. With a swift move, Daejin shielded Gyeong, but was shoved aside by a powerful palm. Move. Don't get in the way. In a flash, Gyeong slipped behind the man, locked her arms tightly around his waist, then pulled off a fierce suplex that slammed her opponent to the ground. Damn, what kind of monsters does the Hangul family breed? You think girls are easy targets, huh? Watching the three fight with such seamless coordination, Daejin felt the urge to jump in and have a go himself. But lacking any real team fight experience, he kept missing the rhythm. Just then, A burly man charged straight at him, throwing punches with lightning speed, leaving Daejin no choice but to defend. Step by step, he retreated until, clang! He backed into a barrel of torches behind him, and finally spotted an opening to counterattack, grabbing a burning stick without hesitation. Making smart use of the environment. That's the real way to fight. By now, Kim Taek and the others had already dealt with most of their opponents, just a little longer, and victory would be within reach. Suddenly, a chill ran down Kim Taek's spine. Chun Gyeong swung a club at him, but Kim Taek's quick reflexes saved him in the nick of time. You can really fight, huh? Looks like you're the toughest one here. Then I'll take you out first. With that, Chun Gyeong raised his baseball bat and charged again. As a born fighter, Kim Taek wasn't about to back down. The two clashed head-on, testing pure strength against pure strength. Just then, a shout rang out. Daejin had been knocked to the ground. Nobody move. If you want to save him, get on your knees. Everyone froze, forced to stay put. At this, Chun Gyeong grew cocky and taunted, "What, not so tough now? Come at me, all of you." The look on his face was more than Kim Taek could bear. But for his brother's safety, he had no choice but to swallow his pride. That only made Chun Gyeong's gang bolder. All this trouble for a deadweight? You dragged everyone into this for a loser? Guys like him should have been ditched ages ago. But if you looked closely at Daejin's face, you'd realize he was no longer the timid kid he used to be. Kim Taek understood the resolve in his eyes. He just didn't expect Chun Gyeong to suddenly throw an olive branch his way. Kim Taek, want to join me? You'll have a much brighter future with me than with Hangul. But think carefully before you answer. Kim Taek grinned and replied, that guy's no burden. Chun Gyeong's pupils contracted at the words. Kim Taek threw another punch. Out of all of us, the craziest one is actually the trash you keep talking about. It turned out that before they took action, Daejin had already made a pact with his teammates. If I ever hold you back, put the bigger picture first. Don't worry about me. Meanwhile, Daejin, reckless and unafraid of death, lunged barehanded for the enemy's glass blade. His mad dog move stunned everyone on the other side. I'm not even afraid of dying. How could I possibly let you take me hostage? He followed up with a punch that smashed the opponent's head. That was the ultimate revolt. A nice guy turning into a mad dog. Such a violent contrast sent a chill down everyone's spine. At the same time, Kim Taek challenged Chun Gyeong once again, which only made Chun Gyeong more fired up as the fight went on. The two traded blows in a fierce exchange. Kim Taek even chose to meet the baseball bat head-on with a side kick, and despite the pain, he sent his opponent flying dozens of meters. But flesh is still only flesh. He was forced to retreat for the moment, unable to get close again. Chun Gyeong, on the other hand, struck with clean, flawless moves each time, burly but surprisingly cautious. Suddenly, Kim Taek sensed something off. The enemy was starting to play dirty and ambush him. Several men pinned his limbs down, leaving him helpless. Let's see you get out of this. The opponent roared and swung a club down at Kim Taek. Luckily, Daejin struck from behind just in time, bringing a wooden plank down on the man's head, shattering it instantly. The out-of-control Chun Gyeong clutched his head and shouted Daejin's name, his tone so menacing that Daejin broke out in a cold sweat. You little brat, are you tired of living? Daejin could only pep himself up inside, forcing himself to stay calm. He just looked scary, that's all. But as Chun Gyeong slowly closed in, Daejin felt every inch of his skin trembling. Because Chun Gyeong was truly enraged. Are you serious? You want to fight me? Hearing that, Daejin's pupils dilated in an instant. He knew very well. This man wasn't your average thug. If they really fought, he might not make it out alive. Daejin once thought he would never repeat his past mistakes, yet now his body was so rigid he couldn't move at all. Chun Gyeong couldn't help but let out a cold laugh at the sight. He then swung his stick down hard, smashing it into Daejin's abdomen. The pain was unlike anything Daejin had ever experienced before. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't move an inch. It was only at this moment that the fear of death truly took hold of him. Meanwhile, Chun Gyeong slowly turned and walked toward Kim Taek and the others. When he looked up, he couldn't help but frown. It turned out that all his 100-odd underlings had been taken down by these three. But he only curled his lips into a wicked grin. 3 against 1. Isn't that a bit unfair? Gaiyong fired back without hesitation. And you have the nerve to talk about fairness, old man? With that, the 3 of them immediately split up to surround him. Seongbin charged in, fists raised, closing the distance rapidly, while Chun Gyeong swung his iron rod at the same time. Fortunately, Seongbin reacted quickly, ducked under the swing, and landed a punch on Chun Gyeong's waist. But the blow did little real damage, and luckily Kim Taek seized the chance to grab Chun Gyeong from behind. Unexpectedly, even with his upper body restrained, Chun Gyeong managed to kick Seongbin away. At that moment, Gaiyong latched onto Chun Gyeong's leg, trying to topple him. His right leg seemed about to give out, but Chun Gyeong suddenly surged with strength, switched the stick to his other hand in a flash, and with a sweeping motion, sent Gaiyong flying over 10 meters. He then twisted around and grabbed Kim Tek's wrist, flipping him over his shoulder and slamming him hard to the ground. Faced with such terrifying strength, all three couldn't help but curse out loud. Yet Chun Gyeong remained as calm as ever, once again inviting them to surrender. "How about joining me instead?" Gaiyong couldn't hold back. "Why don't you just go home and retire, old man? Only an idiot would follow you." Chun Gyeong laughed. "If that's the case, then let's all go to hell together." With that, he smashed his stick against the metal rack, and suddenly, the sound of countless footsteps thundered through the air, leaving the three stunned as hundreds of people appeared in unison. Even the always composed Kim Tek couldn't help but curse. "Just how many people do you have, anyway?" Chun Gyeong's face was alight with excitement. "All together now, take them down." Very soon, the three were exhausted and collapsed to the ground. At this moment, Chun Gyeong switched to psychological warfare. "I heard you're all big fans of that pizza shop? Well, isn't it a coincidence? There's an arsonist in Higuang." As he spoke, he pulled up that person's number right then and there. "I'll have him burn that pizza place to ashes." Just then, a sharp pain shot up from his foot. It turned out Daejin had sunk his teeth deep into Chun Gyeong's ankle. "You mad dog, let go of me." Though fear churned inside Daejin, all he wanted was to protect the pizza shop. He couldn't bear to see Na Yoon sad and in tears again. This desperate resolve was something even Chun Gyeong couldn't understand. He swung his bat and smashed it hard across Daejin's face. Seeing Daejin fall silent, Chun Gyeong opened his contacts again. But as soon as the call connected, a strange sound came from the other end. The next instant, a shadow dropped from above, and a man covered in blood was thrown into the warehouse. Everyone stared, stunned. It was none other than the arsonist, Yoon Sung-bo. Just then, a foot slowly stepped into the warehouse. Before Chun Gyeong could see who it was, he cursed loudly, "Another lunatic with a death wish?" Suddenly he froze. It was Big Brother Hangul. Hangul spoke in a calm, cold tone. "None of you are leaving here alive. Not even Jesus could save you now." Chun Gyeong, seeing Hangul, sneered, "You've actually got the guts to crawl back here? I figured you'd have run off by now." Chun Gyeong, seeing Hangul, sneered, "You've actually got the guts to crawl back here? I figured you'd have run off by now." His men recognized Hangul as that legendary hard case, and, eyeing the battered Yoon Sung-bo, began whispering among themselves. Hangul, holding his phone, spoke quietly, "If you wanted to find me, did you really need to stoop this low?" Chun Gyeong shot back with a cold laugh, "Serves you right for always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. This is what happens when you cross me. In that case, none of you are leaving tonight." One of the onlookers couldn't take it and made the first move. But he was just a hothead, and as soon as he tried, Hangul twisted and subdued him, leaving the guy wailing for his mother. Chun Gyeong's eyebrows lifted. He hadn't even seen how Hangul made his move. Hangul sneered, "There are so many of you. Why not come at me all at once?" As soon as he spoke, the crowd looked at each other, but no one dared move. At that moment, Chun Gyeong was enraged and roared, "All of you, get him. Whoever takes him down gets $1,000,000. A group of men, their senses clouded by adrenaline, shouted as they charged at Hangul. Hangul was already prepared. He first dodged a blow coming straight at him, then sent one man flying with a jab. Next, he grabbed the hood of a man behind him, and with a forceful swing, hurled him into another. In just a few moves, he easily neutralized their attack. Just as he was handling everything with ease, someone suddenly tried to ambush him. Hangul instinctively picked up a wooden stick, and struck the attacker hard on the temple. Then, with a casual lift of his arm, he dodged another attacker's strike. He immediately locked another man by the throat, raised the broken stick, and, without hesitation, drove it down. The crisp, decisive motion stunned Daejin, who stood nearby once again. It seemed that the fight at the construction site was nothing compared to this. Chun Gyeong watched as his men were utterly defeated, and suddenly shouted, "Hangul, stop. If you don't, I'll cripple this kid." Hangul only gave him a calm glance, and in the next second, landed another heavy punch. Chun Gyeong threatened again, but Hangul replied coldly, "Go ahead, kill him if you want." Chun Gyeong was stunned, almost thinking he'd misheard. You really underestimate Hangul. If he feared threats, he'd have died on the streets long ago. Chun Gyeong clenched his teeth in fury. In that case, don't expect to keep your arm. He even had the nerve to taunt, his face full of smugness, "Hangul, you brought this on yourself." But Hangul simply muttered, "Idiot." Then, he kicked over a nearby metal barrel. "Let's see who begs for mercy first." Seeing this, Chun Gyeong's brows furrowed deeply. He remembered what the boss had told him, never get into a conflict with Hangul, and even when collecting protection money, steer clear of them. But Chun Gyeong was young and hot-blooded, convinced that with enough men he could defeat Hangul and become king of the streets, so he roared and charged at Hangul once more. Yet every swing hit only air, while Hangul stayed as calm as ever. At last, Chun Gyeong realized he'd become the dog being toyed with, and could no longer keep it together. Go to hell. But in the next moment, his eyes went blank. His own swing had smashed his lackey's face so badly it was barely recognizable. Hangul let out a long sigh of relief. Looks like you're the only one left now. I always save the best for last. Chun Gyeong was so furious he wanted to rip Hangul's mouth apart right then and there. But before he knew it, he was knocked silly by a punch, his eyes rolling back. His composure shattered, and so did his fighting form. Hangul threw a casual side kick, and the titanium baseball bat actually bent with a clang. Well, that was easy. I haven't even started for real. Come on, get up. Chun Gyeong felt humiliated, forcing himself to stand, then launched himself in a flying tackle, pinning Hangul down and raining blows on him. He remembered his elder brother's advice at that moment, and spat out angrily, "A small fry like you thinks you're worthy to be my opponent?" But things flipped in an instant. Hangul twisted Chun Gyeong's arm in a ruthless lock, and with a sickening crack, Chun Gyeong's heart sank. The agony of a broken arm tore a scream from his lips. Hangul just said calmly, "That gas incident back then. Was that your doing too? Why do you people always go for such filthy tricks? Trash like you would be better off gone from this world." Unexpectedly, Chun Gyeong tried to threaten him with He Guang's name. "If you piss off He Guang, you'll die even worse." Hangul didn't bother to reply, just grabbed a handful of Chun Gyeong's hair, and dragged him mercilessly toward the barrel of fire. Only now did Chun Gyeong finally give in. He remembered what his brother had told him, "Don't mess with Hangul." Staring death in the face, Chun Gyeong begged for his life in panic. But as the ruthless king of the Hangul family, Hangul was never going to give him a second chance. "Only the dead can't threaten me." That was Hangul's true terror. To his enemies, he struck like a venomous snake, but to his brothers, he was a rock-solid shield. And in this battle with He Guang, thanks to Hangul's overwhelming strength, they managed to scrape through. But none of them knew the feud between Hangul's family and He Guang had only just begun. There is always a brief calm before the storm. From that day on, not a single He Guang member was seen in the neighborhood again. With the pizza shop owner's help, Daejin and the others got patched up at the hospital. But unexpectedly, as soon as they were discharged from the hospital, Hangul brought shocking news. He Guang was about to make a comeback. Chun Gyeong was merely a small-time leader, and as long as they had the money, they could quickly assemble even stronger thugs. When that happened, the Hangul family would be the first target to be wiped out. Now, a choice had to be made. Leave, or prepare to fight? At this moment, Dae-iop was the first to speak. "The Hangul family is something you built with your own hands. Besides, this is the only place any of us can truly call home." That night, Daejin found Hangul alone. What he said took Hangul by surprise. It turned out he wanted to know how to become stronger in a short amount of time. After hearing him out, Hangul replied calmly, "You've already progressed beyond what I expected. But you're too eager for quick results. I just don't want to be taken hostage again, and I don't want to be a burden to everyone. Before He Guang comes back, I have to become as strong as the rest of you." Hangul didn't answer right away. He fell silent for a moment. "If you truly want to get stronger quickly, then you'll have to train alone." Ever since He Guang left, the pizzeria had returned to its former bustle, and even the troublesome customers had become fewer. But that day, as Daejin was about to take out the trash, he saw Na Yoon rummaging through the garbage bins, her expression tense, as if she were afraid of something. But what threat could a little pink teddy bear possibly pose? At that moment, Daejin called out to Na Yoon, and when she turned around, she managed a strained smile. She shot back, asking why Daejin wasn't at school. Daejin answered honestly. Na Yoon paused for a moment. "Daejin, could you come pick me up after school tomorrow?" Before Daejin could process it, he agreed without hesitation. But the next second, his face flushed bright red with embarrassment. The following afternoon, Daejin showed up at the school gate, carefully dressed up, but so mortified he wished he could crawl into a hole. Because of the outfit Dae-iop had picked for him, the reserved boy simply couldn't handle it. Whenever anyone spoke, he'd instinctively cover his ears, afraid of being laughed at as an oddball. But when he finally lowered his hands, he realized that, in fact, no one was paying him any attention. It dawned on him that he'd been away from school for so long, he was no longer part of their world. Just as Daejin was muttering to himself, wondering why Na Yoon hadn't come out yet, he saw Na Yoon surrounded by a group of male classmates. The boy in the lead handed Na Yoon a teddy bear, while the others egged him on, calling her sister-in-law. Daejin, feeling inferior, thought to himself, "Of course, handsome guys like her." But Na Yoon's expression was strangely unreadable. Suddenly, with a sharp smack, Na Yoon threw the teddy bear to the ground. It turned out there was a camera hidden in the bear's eye. Once his trick was exposed, the rich kid dropped all pretenses and reached out, trying to grab Na Yoon by the collar. Luckily, a hand blocked him just in time. But when the boys saw Daejin, they didn't back off at all. Instead, They kept mocking his appearance. But the Daejin standing here now was no longer the boy who let others push him around. Still, to the onlookers, the scene seemed almost laughable. Daejin's scolding had no effect. Instead, he got slapped across the face. But Daejin had once sworn never to let those around him be humiliated again, so he landed a heavy punch right back. As long as I'm here, no one will bully him. Dong-a, stunned by the blow and nose bleeding, stared in disbelief. Idiot, I gave you a chance to leave, but you just had to ask for a beating. But to his surprise, the other boy actually knew how to box. With a quick duck, he easily dodged Daejin's attack. Clearly, Daejin's skills weren't quite enough. A swift uppercut from his opponent landed squarely on Daejin's chin, making Daejin's head spin as he crashed to the ground. Now I'll show you what real boxing feels like. But just as he finished his sentence, he suddenly froze. Cut the crap. Do you believe I won't split your head open right now? Dong-a ground his teeth in anger at the threat. He immediately squared up, ready to fight. But at that moment, someone suddenly interrupted them. It turned out some classmates in the back were taking photos and recording videos. Not wanting the situation to get out of hand, Dong-a had to back off for now. But before he'd even taken a few steps, Dong-a turned around and snarled at Daejin, "I'll remember you." Daejin's face was expressionless, but beside him, Na-yoon's heart was pounding in fear. Afterwards, the two of them went to a cafe. Has he been bullying you all this time? Seeing Na-yoon's pale face and her long silence, Daejin tried to comfort her with his own experience. I know what it's like to be bullied and have no one to talk to. Just enduring it is the stupidest way to deal with bullying. If all you ever do is swallow your anger, one day, it's bound to explode. It was because I lost control for a moment that things ended up like this, but I don't want you to follow in my footsteps. As long as I'm here, I'll help you. Na-yoon could no longer hold back after hearing this, tears streaming down her face as she sobbed and poured out everything about Dong-a. At first, he pretended to be a perfect gentleman, but one day, he suddenly started acting strange toward me. I began to keep my distance from him, but that only made him more excited. He even ordered the quiet kids in our class to bully me. That's how I became Dong-a's plaything, bullied by him every single day after that. It wasn't until the day I found a hidden camera inside a stuffed toy that I thought of asking you to pick me up from school. Hearing this, Daejin's anger boiled over. The sunny girl he once knew had suffered so much. In his heart, the seeds of revenge were already sprouting. Meanwhile, Dong-a had started harassing other pretty girls. The more they resisted, the more it thrilled him. Luckily, this time, the girl's boyfriend arrived just in time, rushing forward and throwing a punch at Dong-a. But as soon as he got close, Dong-a instantly subdued him, crushing him to the ground. Seeing her boyfriend beaten, the girl dropped to her knees and begged for mercy, but that only made Dong-a even more excited, forcing the girl to sing, and even making her duet the chorus with her boyfriend. After amusing himself for a while, he grew bored, so he told his lackey to follow Daejin home, figuring that once he got rid of this obstacle, Na-yoon would be his for the taking. But just then, Daejin's voice suddenly rang out behind them, followed immediately by a flying fire extinguisher. The sudden attack made Dong-a curse out loud. Haven't you been looking for me this whole time? Well, here I am. Dong-a's expression changed the moment he saw Daejin. Turns out, the lackey tailing Daejin had run into Hangul, who was just returning from grocery shopping, and Hangul politely asked where Dong-a was. Since you've come knocking, I won't be holding back. Daejin roared back just as furiously, it's people like you, scum like you, who've kept Na-yoon in pain all this time. The one who deserves to die is you. In an instant, Dong-a was engulfed by foam from the fire extinguisher, losing his sight. Daejin seized the chance to strike a decisive blow. Scum like you should be wiped out completely. Dong-a could only fend off the attack with his bare hands. Daejin realized that in a head-on fight, he was no match. With a loud shout, he charged forward once again. At the very instant when Dong-a twisted his body to evade, Daejin suddenly leapt up, swinging a wide, powerful punch, hoping to catch his opponent off guard and take him down by surprise. But in the next second, he found that Dong-a had vanished. It turned out that, just as Daejin's fist was about to land, Dong-a had already slipped away. At that moment, Daejin heard a rush of wind from below, and was immediately struck by an uppercut that sent blood flying from his mouth. What followed was a relentless barrage of combination attacks. So this is the difference between a professional and an ordinary person? Daejin, who had been so full of confidence, was instantly reduced to a punching bag, his opponent's fists moving too fast for him to even defend himself. Then, with a powerful punch, Daejin was sent flying more than 10 meters away. Seeing this, Dong-a began to taunt him, as long as you're in my hands, I can do whatever I want with Na-yoon. The angrier Daejin became, the more wildly Dong-a laughed. Whenever Daejin pictured Na-yoon being humiliated, he gritted his teeth and attacked again. But his punches seemed to move in slow motion, all effortlessly dodged by Dong-a. Enraged, Daejin tried using the techniques Hangul had taught him, But before he could even throw a straight punch, Dong-a countered with a heavy blow that knocked his attack aside. Daejin staggered back in pain. Why am I still so helpless? Why can't I reach their level? Consumed by self-doubt, Daejin even considered running away. Just then, Dong-a came at him with another punch, and in his panic, Daejin hurriedly shoved open the bathroom door, causing Dong-a's fist to crash into the door instead, injuring his own hand in the process. Seizing the opportunity, Daejin charged at him again, hoping to catch him off guard. But Dong-a's left hand was still just as fierce, and this time, Daejin didn't back down, risking everything. Maybe he still had a chance, even if it was just this one. What followed was another one-sided beating, lasting until Dong-a grew tired and finally let Daejin catch his breath. Dong-a sneered and mocked, "You're not even qualified to be my punching bag. If I wanted to kill you, you'd be dead by now." But Daejin saw right through him. "Your right hand is done for, isn't it? You've only been throwing punches with your left." With his secret exposed, Dong-a flew into a rage, delivering another torrent of furious blows. Strangely, Daejin never once tried to dodge. At that moment, Dong-a suddenly sensed something was wrong, noticing that Daejin had been staring intently at his right hand. Furious beyond measure, Dong-a swung his right fist with all his might, only to be met with a pain far more intense than he had anticipated. While Dong-a was momentarily stunned, Daejin sprang forward and locked him in a tight embrace. It turned out this was the secret technique Hangul had taught him before leaving. When facing a professional boxer, the best strategy is to seize every opening and strike decisively. And this grappling hold was one of the most common fighting techniques. The essence lies in clutching the back of your opponent's head with both hands, then driving your knee upward with everything you've got. It doesn't matter where you hit, as long as you strike hard, it's enough. Daejin, repeating the move in his mind, let out a furious roar and delivered a spinning knee strike. A sharp crack echoed through the air. Dong-a's rib was snapped clean in two. The excruciating pain made his pupils contract violently. He never imagined he would lose to this unremarkable-looking kid. Yet, with his last ounce of strength, he managed to break free from Daejin's hold. But just as he escaped the lock, Daejin got another chance. While Dong-a instinctively staggered back, he grabbed Daejin's hair in a death grip, then swung his dominant leg as high as he could. The impact of that kick, enough to floor even Muhammad Ali himself. Dong-a trembled all over from the pain, his voice breaking into pleas for mercy, all traces of his usual bullying arrogance gone. For the first time, Daejin had managed to protect the one he loved through his own strength. As Dong-a panted that he'd never bully Na-yoon again, before he could finish his sentence, Daejin smashed a fist into his face. With a snarl, he spat out, "If you so much as touch a hair on Na-yoon's head again, I'll twist your head off and use it for a soccer ball." No sooner had the words left his mouth than a chill swept up from behind. It was Dong-a's accomplice, seizing the chance to attack. Caught off guard, Daejin was pinned to the ground, the man's grip so powerful he couldn't break free at all. Seeing this, Dong-a scrambled up at once, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and prepared to finish Daejin off. But at that moment, Dong-a's eyes rolled back in his head. Hangul had arrived just in time, landing a kick right on Dong-a's broken rib. Dong-a collapsed to the floor with a scream, drawing his friend's attention. The accomplice immediately charged at Hangul, but Hangul simply spun around, driving his elbow straight into the man and splattering blood across the wall, instantly taking him out of the fight. It turned out Hangul had been watching from the shadows all along. He even praised Daejin for his solid performance in the real fight this time, saying that if it hadn't been for someone interfering halfway, they would have already won. But he also pointed out that Daejin's one weakness was being too soft, and that threats without any real bite were useless against these scumbags. If things kept going like this, sooner or later, he'd suffer a major loss. After speaking, Hangul launched right into a live demonstration, swinging a fist straight at Dong-a's privates. With backstabbers like these, you have to root them out completely. Never leave trouble behind. Daejin felt his chest tighten as he listened, swallowing nervously on instinct. Meanwhile, the girls in the private room, noticing that Dong-a still hadn't returned, began to quietly support their injured boyfriends and slip out. The anxious girl glanced around nervously as soon as she stepped outside, and only relaxed when she saw no one by the stairwell. But then, she heard a sudden scream coming from the restroom. Curiosity got the better of her, and she poked her head in for a look. And the scene that met her eyes left her utterly stunned. 3 boys, stripped completely naked, were kneeling obediently on the ground, while Hangul snapped photo after photo with a flourish, pausing now and then to adjust their poses. So this was his final move: if you dare bully girls again, all these photos go online. Just then, Daejin spotted the girl outside the door. Worried about word getting out, he quickly gestured for her to keep quiet. Seeing that the scum had been put in their place, the girl nodded back in silent agreement. At that moment, Daejin suddenly noticed that the girl's school uniform was exactly the same as the one Na-yoon wore. He immediately turned and left, face dark and voice cold. "You lot better not bully anyone again. The next time I hear about it, you're finished. Hangul nodded in agreement beside him. A few days later, sure enough, no one dared mess with Na Yun anymore. Dong-a, too, quieted down at school, gone was his former arrogance. Seeing Daejin stand up for her and even get hurt in the process, Na Yun's heart was full of tenderness. Hangul just watched this little soap opera unfold with mild boredom. But suddenly, Daejin dropped a bombshell. He said that he'd seen a group chat on Dong-a's phone that day, full of photos of pretty girls from school. Daejin even asked Na Yun if there were many scumbags like that on campus. Na Yun nodded. Yeah. There are plenty of trash like Dong-a. Every day there's someone doing things more despicable than animals. On the other side, the girl who had been bullied by Dong-a was now blocked by 2 male classmates, trying to coax information about Dong-a out of her. But the girl remembered her promise to Daejin, insisting that she knew nothing. The men, frustrated and angry, grabbed her hair, about to get rough. Fortunately, Hangul appeared just in time and stopped them. One of the men questioned Hangul, but Hangul just smiled and introduced himself. I'm a runaway drifter, just looking for some leftover cat food from the strays. His words left the men completely baffled. The girl, however, broke out in a cold sweat, because she recognized Hangul as the one who had taught Dong-a a lesson. Just then, the man tried to provoke Hangul, but Hangul didn't retaliate. Instead, he raised his voice and shouted for help at the top of his lungs. Sure enough, the very next second, a boy in a hoodie appeared. Daejin landed a heavy punch, sending the black-haired guy flying more than 10 meters away. It turned out this was a real combat training session Hangul had set up for Daejin. The fastest way to grow stronger was to get right into the fight. Daejin had just knocked down the black-haired guy when the brown-haired one lunged at him. But attacks like this were no longer a threat to Daejin. He countered with a punch straight to the brown-haired guy's face. In pain, the brown-haired guy could only talk tough to save face. The black-haired guy, seeing this, tried to sneak up on Hangul. But before he could get close, Hangul seized his wrist. With a loud crack, he snapped the guy's arm right then and there. Hangul said calmly, if you want to live, go knock out that guy in the hoodie. But at this point, all the black-haired guy wanted was to run. Hangul lowered his head, his eyes turning cold, and the sheer force of his presence made the other man tremble all over. Seeing Daejin's dodges getting more and more precise, Hangul couldn't help but praise him. Nice footwork, and you're taking the initiative to attack, which means you've completely left behind your old weakness and cowardice. Your progress could be called terrifying. Though I'd say you're just a top rookie at best. But Daejin didn't see it that way. The back and forth of the fight was boosting his confidence, and even if he didn't know exactly how strong he was, he believed that as long as he didn't slack off, he could win. At that moment, Hangul suddenly called out to Daejin, if you're finding this so easy, I'll send you another one. Daejin was stunned. He'd had a good chance one-on-one, but now it had suddenly turned into a 2-on-1, catching him off guard. Daejin then took several heavy kicks in a row. Finally, he realized that with the two of them joining forces against him, he didn't stand a chance. In his panic, he took another hard punch. The two worked together as if they'd rehearsed it 100 times. Just as he met black-haired guy head-on with his fists, brown-haired guy would come in from the side with a flying kick, throwing Daejin's rhythm into complete chaos. They took turns attacking him, and soon Daejin became nothing more than a human punching bag. The girl nearby anxiously urged Hangul to step in, but Hangul just replied coolly, it's not time yet. As Daejin was kicked and beaten again and again, he suddenly remembered the time he'd been surrounded and beaten by school bullies. Rage exploded inside him. He suddenly leapt up, tackled brown-haired guy to the ground, and unleashed a furious barrage of punches. Seeing this, black-haired guy started swinging wildly at Daejin from behind, trying to knock him down. But after dozens of punches, Daejin showed no reaction at all. In truth, this was Daejin's strategy. Even though fighting multiple opponents alone was the worst move, right now, it was his only option. Since he couldn't beat two at once, he'd take one out first. Daejin's ferocity drove black-haired guy to fight back even harder, landing a knee straight into Daejin's face. The pain sent Daejin flying more than 10 meters away. When black-haired guy saw his friend's face covered in blood, he cursed Daejin for being insane, and swore he'd make him pay. But before he could finish, he was stopped in his tracks by the fierce, one-eyed glare Daejin fixed on him, his pupils contracting, and he instinctively stumbled backward. He tripped over a stone underfoot, fell to the ground, and completely panicked. Seeing Daejin, gasping for breath, closing in, he cried out in despair, begging for mercy. But the next second, Daejin collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud. Once black-haired guy was sure Daejin wasn't moving, he clenched his teeth, raised his fist, and charged at him. Just then, Hangul finally made his move, patting black-haired guy on the head and saying lazily, good work. Go home and get some rest. Only then did the girl run up to thank Hangul. But Hangul said, this kid didn't fight to save you, you know. With that, he hoisted Daejin onto his back and headed home. After a quick patch-up, Daejin asked Hangul, "Big bro, why'd you make me fight two at once? If it was one-on-one, I definitely would've won." Hangul's answer sobered him up completely. Real gangsters won't line up and wait to fight you one-on-one. With your skills now, revenge is impossible. Daejin had thought he was strong, but Hangul's words cut him right down to size. He immediately asked Hangul how to get stronger. Hangul was well prepared, and brought Daejin to the park. Coincidentally, a few local thugs nearby were bullying someone. Hangul pointed ahead, and Daejin nodded in acknowledgement. Then, Hangul led Daejin as they slowly approached the gang. A real-life group brawl training was about to begin. Hangul had once taught him that if you want to defeat someone stronger than yourself, you have to catch them off guard and land a solid hit on the chin. Only then is it the surest way to win in one blow. But if you're facing a group of enemies, you must strike as quickly as possible before they have time to react. The more you take down, the safer you'll be. Yet Daejin never imagined that even after he landed an uppercut on the brown-haired thug, the guy didn't go down. Instead, he himself was blindsided by a flying kick from the blonde-haired one behind him. In an instant, several people surrounded Daejin and began a frenzied assault. This was exactly the worst-case scenario Hangul had warned about when fighting multiple opponents. When you're surrounded by three or more at once, there's almost no chance of winning. The only way to turn things around is to escape. Seeing Daejin trying to slip away, the group immediately gave chase. But escaping doesn't mean running blindly. At the corner, Daejin grabbed a bicycle, and just as they were about to catch up, he swung it out at them. The brown-haired thug couldn't stop in time and tumbled head over heels. Now the group was completely enraged. A purple-haired thug charged forward, pedal to the metal. Unlucky Daejin looked like he was about to get caught, but suddenly, Daejin turned around. Purple Hair didn't have time to react and took a heavy punch straight on. This was the second move Hangul had taught him. If you don't have absolute strength, never dream of taking on everyone at once. Just now, throwing the bike and turning to counterattack. These moves were all about disrupting their pursuit, and creating a chance for a one-on-one fight. When the two blonde-haired thugs arrived, they found Purple Hair already down for the count. Without thinking too much, they kept chasing deeper into the alley. But after only a few steps, they hit a fork in the road. To find Daejin as quickly as possible, they had no choice but to split up. Blonde Hair thought back to everything that had happened, feeling more and more like it was an ambush set up in advance. But he was sure he'd never crossed Daejin before. Just then, Daejin suddenly appeared and landed a punch. He thought to himself that he'd finally gotten his one-on-one chance. But he didn't expect Blonde Hair to react so fast, landing a left kick that sent Daejin's nose bleeding. Before Daejin could even think about defending himself, Blonde Hair was already back in position, launching a relentless series of kicks. The ferocious kicks left Daejin no time to dodge. He could only swing his fists in blind resistance. But all he got in return was an even more vicious kick. Daejin, spent and out of strength, finally collapsed to the ground. What followed was a one-sided beating at the hands of the blonde thug. "Why are you picking a fight? Who sent you?" Seeing Daejin gritting his teeth in pain, the blonde landed several more savage kicks. "Dare to mess with me? Looks like you've got a death wish." It wasn't until Daejin lay completely motionless that the blonde finally stopped. Turning away, he pulled out his phone to call his buddies, never suspecting that Daejin still had a breath left in him. Just as the blonde was giving the address, Daejin suddenly clamped down on his head, somehow producing a rock in his right hand. At that moment, the brown-haired accomplice arrived. He poked his head around the corner and froze in shock. He saw Daejin, crazed, smashing the rock down on the blonde's head. He instinctively shouted for Daejin to stop, but when he saw Daejin's rabid dog expression, even he couldn't help but feel a twinge of fear. Especially when Daejin slowly turned toward him, howling in near despair, "We never did anything to you, why are you doing this to us?" Those words sounded painfully familiar to Daejin. He'd once asked the school bully the same question. "Why bully me?" But the bastard's answer had been simple. "No reason, I just want to hit you." Now, Daejin felt exactly the same. He just wanted to hit him. He turned and unleashed a barrage of blows on the thug's left arm. Daejin's frenzy made the brown-haired guy curse in rage. Daejin just replied coldly, "You're next. Your head's going to split open." At that, the brown-haired thug's pupils shrank in terror. He'd thought Daejin was just some lunatic, but never imagined he'd fight with such brutality. The more he thought about it, the more scared he became, so he could only hurl threats as he ran. "Just wait. My school boss will beat you so bad you'll be picking your teeth up off the floor." Daejin hadn't expected the guy to still be mouthing off at a time like this, so he grabbed a brick and chased after him. But after the brutal fight, he was completely spent, and could only watch as the brown-haired thug disappeared from view. The thug, seeing Daejin unable to catch up, finally breathed a sigh of relief. But after only a few steps, he was suddenly tripped. He cursed loudly from the pain. Hangul walked over and asked, "Is the fight over? Tell me where the guy who fought you went, and I'll let you off." The brown-haired thug, thinking this homeless man was talking nonsense, swung a heavy punch without hesitation. But unfortunately for him, he was up against Hangul, the strongest character in the comic. With just one punch, the brown-haired boy collapsed on the spot. At the mouth of the alley, Hangul ran into Daejin, who was panting heavily. "I taught you how to fight in a group. How come you still let one slip away?" Daejin hurried to explain, "There was one guy who was really tough. It took too long, and I just didn't have the strength to chase him down. Even though you didn't take care of everyone yourself, you're no longer a rookie. You've earned my recognition." A knowing smile crept onto Daejin's face when he heard this. But Hangul added another jab, "Still, your skills right now aren't even half as good as Daeyeop's. You've got a long way to go." Word spread quickly among the upperclassmen that Daejin had gone one-on-one with the school bully. A muscular boy named Huang Xian was chatting in a corner with a man about how Donga got beaten up. He described the scene, saying there was just one guy in a hoodie and another with a wolf-cut hairstyle. The man in the corner was Kim Dong-jin, the number 2 in the second year at Yeongnam School. The two were heading back to the classroom when a student accidentally splashed water all over Kim Dong-jin while washing his face. The student nearby quickly tried to warn him, but when he looked up, he saw both of them glaring daggers at him. Before he could even apologize, Huang Xian sent him flying with a kick. "You worthless punk. How dare you get Dong-jin Hyung dirty?" No sooner had he spoken than another student patted them on the shoulder. "Looks like you're both in second year, right? We're third-year athletes. Try raising a hand again and see what happens." This time, as Huang Xian was about to attack, a steady hand clamped down on him. It was none other than Han Jisoo, the captain of the third-year athletic club. "He's already apologized, so let it go." Huang Xian saw the guy was a whole head taller than him, but without another word, he swung a kick straight at him. The next instant left him stunned. Han Jisoo caught his full force kick with a single hand, then, without hesitation, hammered a few punches into the blonde. Huang Xian dodged desperately but still took a few hits. Han Jisoo felt victory was in the bag, but out of nowhere, Huang Xian broke the rules, spitting the toothpick from his mouth right into Han Jisoo's eyes. Blinded, Han Jisoo gave Huang Xian just the opening he needed. A vicious knee sent Han Jisoo's nose streaming with blood. In that split second, Huang Xian snatched up a length of pipe from the ground. He strangled Han Jisoo's neck with an unspeakably cruel grip. Very soon, Han Jisoo collapsed from lack of oxygen, becoming a helpless lamb awaiting slaughter. Huang Xian only stopped when Han Jisoo had bled out completely and fallen utterly silent. He turned to look at the two upperclassmen, his voice icy as he said, "Come with me. Let you have a taste of what it means to be a senior." At this moment, Daejin was walking Na Yoon home after school. Their relationship had grown rapidly closer over the past few days. But suddenly, Daejin noticed someone bullying a classmate in the corner. Since big brother Hangul wasn't around, he hesitated, wondering if he should intervene. What if it delayed his date with Na Yoon? While he was wavering, Na Yoon noticed his unease and called out to him. But Daejin's mind was filled with memories of when he himself had been bullied. So he made an excuse about needing to use the restroom, and headed straight for the alley entrance. Sure enough, the two were still bullying someone. Burning with anger, Daejin knocked one of them down with a punch. But just as he was about to throw a second punch, the man suddenly looked terrified, making Daejin a little suspicious. These two didn't really seem like bad guys. At that moment, the man he'd knocked down slowly got up. "They're the third-year bullies at school. Whenever they wash up, they always splash water on me." He even muttered about how Daejin looked so small and skinny. Daejin couldn't be bothered to respond and turned to leave. But the man actively invited Daejin to a fight, and before Daejin could react, he had grabbed Daejin's hoodie in a vice grip, making it hard for him to breathe. The man took off his glasses, speaking slowly. "You're the guy who's always brawling around our school, aren't you?" Only then did Daejin realize this guy wasn't the victim at all. He broke free from Huang Xian's hold. But there was no way the man would let him off that easily. He kicked at Daejin again. Looking at the man before him, Daejin finally understood. He was here for revenge, because his gang had been beaten up before. But the man only sneered and said, "Don't you underestimate our school." With that, he charged at Daejin. Daejin felt their builds were about the same, so he prepared to fight back, but then realized the man's arms were longer than his. With one wrong move, he was instantly overpowered, and quickly knocked to the ground. But Daejin had no intention of giving up. Thinking fast, he used a trick he'd learned. He grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground and flung it at the man's eyes. Huang Xian's move brought Daejin's offensive to an abrupt halt. The next second, Daejin charged forward, shouting, "This time I'm going all out." He thought a single kick to the head would finish his opponent, but to his surprise, something unexpected happened. Huang Xian caught the kick in a firm grip. With a wicked smirk curling on his lips, Huang Xian swung his leg and landed a kick right at Daejin's crotch. Daejin went down instantly, and what followed was Huang Xian's special care. Meanwhile, Na Yun waited and waited for Daejin to return, but when he didn't, she had no choice but to go look for him. As a result, she heard Daejin grumbling endlessly in the alley, "Why am I still so weak?" Afterward, the two of them walked to a small park together. Na Yun advised Daejin, "If you keep this up, you're going to get yourself in trouble sooner or later." Of course, Daejin understood, so he said, "If I don't get stronger, how can I protect you?" Na Yun, hearing this, broke into a happy smile and encouraged him, "Daejin, you'll definitely teach those guys a lesson for me. I believe in you." Na Yun's encouragement brought a smile to Daejin's face as well. The next day, the news that Daejin had been badly beaten by Huang Xian from Jungran High School reached the Hangul family. Huang Xian even took photos, threatening to make Daejin a complete laughingstock. When everyone heard, they were furious. "How dare they lay a finger on one of us? We have to show them who's boss." The group was busy plotting how to help Daejin get revenge, when Hangul immediately stopped them. "You can't get involved. Since Daejin is a member of the Hangul family, he has to take down a school on his own." Hangul's words left Daejin stunned. "I just got beaten up so easily, and you want me to take over a school? Are you kidding me?" But Hangul went on, "Daejin, how much longer are you going to let people push you around?" Daejin was struck by these words. The next day, two punks from Jungran High School were snickering as they looked at their phones, the screen showing photos of Daejin getting beaten up, and the two of them were discussing, "If Hangul hadn't stopped us last time, we would have taught Daejin a lesson already." Just then, a voice sounded from behind them. "Just the two of you?" Before the words had even faded, Daejin strode forward and started swinging, knocking the long-haired guy down with a single punch. The blonde guy charged in too, but this time Daejin was stronger. He landed a heavy blow right on him. The blonde guy was stunned, and quickly asked Daejin what he wanted. Daejin replied coldly, startling him. He actually wanted to take over Jungran High. Daejin pressed further, "So who's the boss at Jungran High now?" As he spoke, he raised his fist in warning, forcing the blonde guy to tell the truth. Remembering how Daejin had beaten him up before, the blonde guy had no choice but to confess. Right now the boss of Jungran High is Hyo Il-tak, but he hardly ever comes to school. These days, it's Huang Xian and Kim Dong-jin who call the shots. When Hyo Il-tak's not around, the two of them are in charge. After spilling everything, the blonde guy dragged the unconscious long-haired guy away. Before leaving, he couldn't help but taunt Daejin, "Not that it matters, there's no way you'll win anyway." At that moment, Daejin was burning with fighting spirit. He immediately called out to the blonde guy, "Leave me those guys' phone numbers. It won't be long before you meet the new boss of Jungran." Huang Xian looked at Daejin's text, then turned and walked away, muttering mockingly about how Daejin was overestimating himself, actually dreaming of ruling Jungran. Soon after, Huang Xian arrived at the meeting spot on his motorcycle. He had barely gotten off when he shouted, "Daejin, get out here, now." He tried to track Daejin by calling his phone, and was just heading toward the ringing in the bushes, when he found only a phone lying there. Suddenly, Daejin appeared behind him, dashing forward in a flash, landing a punch from behind. But Huang Xian blocked it with his shoulder and sneered, "Daejin, is this all you've got, cheap tricks like that?" Daejin shot back without hesitation, "Your reach doesn't mean anything to me." With that, he immediately wrapped his arms around Huang Xian's legs. When facing someone with long arms, the best tactic is to get in close and take them down. That way, Huang Xian's advantage is gone. Huang Xian was stunned by the sudden move. Daejin grabbed the phone from the ground and smashed it at Huang Xian over and over. Meanwhile, another Jungran boss, Kim Dong-jin, asked the person next to him, "Where did Huang Xian go?" The other replied, "Probably went to find the troublemaker from earlier." Kim Dong-jin immediately sent a few people to look for Huang Xian. A man beside him was about to warn Kim Dong-jin to be careful. But Kim Dong-jin waved it off, saying, "I'm not worried about Huang Xian. I'm going to teach that arrogant punk a lesson." Elsewhere, Huang Xian suddenly gathered his strength and shoved Daejin upward. Daejin sensed danger right away. Huang Xian clamped Daejin's mouth with 2 fingers, a twisted smile curling at his lips, then yanked hard and flung Daejin aside. Blood instantly streaked across Daejin's face. Huang Xian sneered, "If you'd held out a little longer, your mouth would have split open. Don't even think about leaving here alive today." Daejin grew wary. Huang Xian lunged at him, forcing Daejin to scramble to his feet and dodge. The tide turned in an instant, and Daejin was overpowered. Huang Xian kicked hard at Daejin's left side. Daejin realized that if this kept up, he'd be overwhelmed sooner or later. Huang Xian taunted, "With skills like that, you think you can rule Jungran?" As he spoke, he crooked his finger, brimming with provocation. Gritting his teeth, Daejin charged at Huang Xian, using the same move as before. Seeing this, Huang Xian sneered, "This trick again? Got burned once and still haven't learned?" He seized the chance to lock Daejin's head in a chokehold, twisting hard, making Daejin gasp for breath. Just then, Daejin kicked Hwang Xian in the groin, drawing a howl of pain from Hwang Xian. Immediately after, Daejin imitated Hwang Xian's move from just now, thrusting 2 fingers straight into Hwang Xian's mouth. He flung him to the ground without hesitation. From a distance, Hangul witnessed the scene and couldn't help his shock. This guy's ability to mimic is insane. He only saw the move once and already mastered his opponent's technique. Hwang Xian, sprawled on the ground, hurriedly called out for Daejin to stop. He even asked why Daejin was beating him up, insisting Daejin was the one who provoked him first. He was just trying to protect the school. But Daejin would never fall for that excuse again. Just as he was about to land another kick, Hwang Xian suddenly grabbed his foot. Right at that moment, Daejin heard the sound of a motorcycle behind him. His heart skipped a beat. Shit, this is bad. Luckily, Hangul appeared just in time, yanking Daejin away, helping him dodge Kim Dong-jin's violent charge. Daejin slumped to the ground, gasping for air. He just barely escaped death. Looking at the man in front of him, Daejin remembered the photo he'd been shown of the guys from Jungran High. The newcomer was none other than Jungran High's other second-in-command, Kim Dong-jin. Kim Dong-jin saw Hwang Xian lying defeated on the ground and was stunned that Daejin, the new kid, had taken him down. Daejin and Hangul locked eyes with the advancing Kim Dong-jin, clearly unable to avoid a brutal fight. Kim Dong-jin charged at Hangul with heavy strides, throwing a punch. Hangul nimbly dodged to the side, shoving Kim Dong-jin toward Daejin, and turned back with a grin, saying, "Daejin, do your best. I can't help you here. If you want to rule Jungran High, you'll have to beat him on your own." Kim Dong-jin, seeing Hangul trying to escape, hurried to stop him, but Daejin wasn't about to let that happen. He swung a punch at Kim Dong-jin's chin. He thought he'd landed a hit, but Kim Dong-jin countered with a sweeping kick, aiming straight for Daejin's face. With a loud crash, Daejin was knocked to the ground. Kim Dong-jin looked down at Daejin, who now lay before him, utterly confused. This guy, who looked so weak and frail, how exactly did he manage to pin Hwang Xian to the ground and beat him up so badly? Hwang Xian hurriedly explained, "I already said I was careless. Otherwise, how could this kid have beaten me like this?" But the two of them still couldn't figure it out. What was Daejin after, insisting on challenging them? Was it really just because of those videos? As soon as Daejin heard this, he rushed right up to the two. "You bastards, shut up." He threw a punch straight at Kim Dong-jin's face, but Kim Dong-jin didn't even flinch. "So, you've seen that group too? So what? Don't pretend you're some kind of hero. You like those videos as much as anyone, don't you?" The moment Daejin heard that, his anger boiled over. He bit down hard on Kim Dong-jin's hand. Kim Dong-jin, caught off guard, let go, then immediately kicked at Daejin, but Daejin quickly blocked with his arm. Hwang Xian seized the chance, and threw a punch at Daejin. Caught between the two, Daejin couldn't defend himself at all. The tables had turned, and now it was a one-sided beatdown. Daejin knew full well that if he didn't find an opening soon, he'd be finished here today. Looking at the staggering Daejin, Hwang Xian and Kim Dong-jin mocked him. "What's wrong, tough guy? Weren't you so brave before? How come you can't take it now?" Hearing their taunts, Daejin could only roll his eyes in silence. 2 against 1, and you still think you're hot shit? Suddenly, Daejin lunged at Hwang Xian. Seeing this, Hwang Xian quickly swung a fist, but Daejin dodged nimbly, feigning a retreat. Hwang Xian reached out, trying to grab his hat, but Daejin spun around in a flash, and landed an uppercut that knocked Hwang Xian to the ground. Kim Dong-jin shouted from the side, "You useless idiot. How could you get taken down like that?" But the next instant, Daejin kicked at Kim Dong-jin. However, Kim Dong-jin was just too strong. The kick didn't even faze him. He grabbed Daejin's leg, then swept his own leg out, slamming Daejin down onto the ground. Without hesitation, he followed up with 2 rapid kicks. He kicked Daejin backward. Daejin was still searching for a chance to fight back, but Hwang Xian suddenly locked him from behind. The two of them launched a fierce assault on Daejin, shouting, "This is a street brawl, who cares about your rules?" Daejin was barely holding up under the 2-on-1 attack, but how could he admit defeat? If it was a contest of ruthlessness, he'd prove who was tougher. Suddenly, Daejin slammed his head backward into Hwang Xian, finally breaking free from the hold. Kim Dong-jin kept throwing punches, trying to end it quickly, but Daejin abruptly tackled Kim Dong-jin into the nearby stream. If it was about being ruthless, he'd show who was willing to go further. At that moment, Kim Dong-jin panicked. He'd never faced an opponent so reckless. It didn't take long before Kim Dong-jin was defeated. Hwang Xian clutched his nose, shouting, "Is this guy's head made of stone? My nose is almost broken." Daejin climbed out of the water onto the bank, ready to deal with Hwang Xian. Before Hwang Xian could react, Daejin punched him square in the face, knocking him out cold. Just like that, The two big bullies of Jungrin were completely beaten by Daejin, who collapsed onto the ground, exhausted. Suddenly, a hand reached out from behind. It was Hangul. A few words of praise from him made Daejin grin sheepishly. Hangul helped Daejin up and started walking him back, reminding him, there's still one guy left in Jungrin. You have to beat him if you want to be the boss here. But before Daejin could catch his breath, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. All around them, Kim Dong-jin's underlings, sent to look for Huang Xian, were sprawled on the ground, every single one beaten down by someone. One of the henchmen on the ground was trembling as he looked up at the two of them. That guy's a monster. He immediately fished out his phone from his underwear, and on the screen, the contact was none other than Hyo Il-tak, the boss of Yeongnam High. A few hours later, Kim Dong-jin and Huang Xian, both having been taught a lesson by Daejin, finally woke up. The two were talking about Daejin. Kim Dong-jin couldn't help but shudder as he recalled the look in Daejin's eyes. They were still brooding over what had happened today. If Hyo Il-tak found out, they'd be in big trouble again. Just then, a man in slippers, his arms covered in tattoos, walked up behind them. It was Hyo Il-tak himself. Huang Xian didn't even have time to explain. Before Hyo Il-tak lashed out with a whip-like kick, sending him sprawling to the ground. He pressed his foot down on Huang Xian's head and said coldly, the moment I'm not around, you two turn into useless trash, letting anyone push you around. Kim Dong-jin was so intimidated by Hyo Il-tak's presence that he froze on the spot. Hyo Il-tak continued, don't be scared. I'm going to beat him so badly in front of everyone, even his own mother won't recognize him. The scene shifts to the next day. Daejin had just finished shopping and was heading home to celebrate yesterday's victory. At that moment, a man dressed in black began to approach him slowly. Just as Daejin was about to hang up the phone, he saw a man on a motorcycle speeding toward him, with a passenger in the back wielding an iron bar. The iron bar was about to smash into Daejin's face. When, thankfully, Dae-iop appeared in the nick of time, using his own hand to block the attack for Daejin. Realizing things had gone south, the two attackers scrambled to escape on the bike. The guy with the iron bar tried to warn his buddy at the handlebars to watch the road, but got hit square on the head with a comic book. It was Hangul who had arrived. Hangul stomped hard on the guy who'd fallen to the ground, but these two were just low-level goons working for Jungrin. Hangul then launched into a nagging mode. Daejin, pay attention. Beating a few of Jungrin's small-time leaders doesn't mean anything. You have to take down the boss at the very top. Once a fight starts, you need to be quick and decisive. Never leave loose ends. I've told you this before. If you hesitate, the consequences will be ugly. Things like what happened today will keep happening over and over. Meanwhile, Jungrin's boss, Hyo Il-tak, received a phone call. He immediately asked if they'd caught Daejin. To his surprise, it was Daejin's voice on the other end. Daejin said, cut the tricks. If you want to fight, come at me one-on-one. I, Daejin, am going to wipe Jungrin out. Hyo Il-tak was instantly intrigued. No one had ever dared challenge him directly. Daejin was the first. Alright, then. Let's do it. I'll be waiting. Night fell. Daejin arrived at the agreed location right on time. The thugs were still mocking Daejin. What an idiot, coming here all by himself. Before Daejin could say a word, a man swung a wooden stick at him. Suddenly, a large hand grabbed the man's face with force. Hangul yanked his head and flung him hard. The man spun like a top, turning a full 360 degrees before crashing to the ground. Hangul spoke coldly, you punks really don't understand what it means to follow the rules, do you? The gangsters, seeing Hangul, immediately panicked. After all, this monster in front of them had once single-handedly taken down dozens of guys from Jungrin High. Hangul led Daejin and the others straight into the circle of thugs. He looked at the guy sitting on the chair and asked, is that him? Then let's not waste any time. We won't interfere. The two of you fight one-on-one. How about that? The man sneered, you really think I'll listen to a bunch of losers like you? But Hangul's next words made Hyo Il-tak's face change instantly. Hangul said, you scared of a one-on-one? Worried you'll lose face in front of your boys if you get beaten? No wonder, losing would be pretty embarrassing. The man gritted his teeth in anger, and finally stood up, saying, fine, I'll play along with you today. Hangul nodded, agreeing on Daejin's behalf. Daejin was still a little worried. Hangul, he's the boss of Jungrin High. Can I really win? Hangul reassured him, don't be afraid. Every fight has a chance to win. The key is whether you can seize it. Hearing this, Daejin felt a surge of confidence. Just then, the boss of Jungrin mocked him, I was wondering who it was. Turns out it's you, idiot June. Daejin froze, it was actually Hyo Il-tak. Daejin remembered all those days of being bullied at school. Every day, they ordered him around, and if he displeased them, they'd beat him. Hyo Il-tak was one of the main tormentors. From the first time he saw him, Daejin knew this guy was bad news. Once, someone accidentally bumped their table, and Hyo Il-tak beat him half to death. The very first time Hyo Il-tak met Daejin, he naturally joined in bullying him. Back then, Daejin was timid, always dragged up to the rooftop by them, his hands used as an ashtray. Whenever they were in a bad mood, they'd hit Daejin, mock him, torment him. Back then, all Daejin felt was fear and helplessness. But today, he wouldn't back down anymore. He was no longer that useless coward who only knew how to run away. Daejin suddenly lifted his leg and charged forward, throwing a punch, but Hyo-iltak blocked it easily with just one hand. Just as Daejin was about to try and trip him with his leg, Hyo-iltak stepped back, effortlessly dodging his attack. Suddenly, the man leapt up. "Foolish Jun, I've long since seen through your tricks." He lashed out with a high roundhouse kick, aiming straight for Daejin's face. In the next instant, the man grabbed Daejin's cap, as if he wanted to end the fight with a single punch. Luckily, Daejin's reflexes were sharp enough, he swung his fist and broke the man's attack. Daejin knew perfectly well that the man before him was far stronger than any ordinary person. Only after actually fighting him could one feel the pressure he exerted. Just then, the man suddenly accelerated, instantly closing the gap between them. Before Daejin could react, his opponent had already lifted his leg, his speed as if he'd switched on turbo. A whip kick landed squarely on Daejin's forehead. Daejin hit the ground with a thud. Off to the side, Ga-young watched Daejin fall and asked Hangul, a bit worried, whether they should step in to help. At that moment, Dae-iop spoke up, "Let's wait a bit longer. That kid's been through hellish training every day recently. He's not going down that easily." Meanwhile, Hyo-iltak was wondering if Daejin was already finished. But to his surprise, Daejin suddenly lunged at him and locked him in a tight hold. Panicking, the man drove his elbow into Daejin's back, making Daejin cry out in pain. But Daejin gritted his teeth and held on, managing to tackle the man to the ground right in front of the Jungran High underlings. Then, he drove a straight punch into the man's face. The man's face was filled with shock. He hadn't expected to be punched by the guy everyone used to call a loser. He quickly kicked Daejin away, jumped up, and charged at him again. Just as he was about to throw another kick, Daejin caught his leg. With a forceful twist, Daejin slammed the man to the ground, and in an instant, the tide of the fight turned. All the underlings watching were stunned. None of them had expected their boss and Daejin to be so evenly matched. Was this guy really bullied before? Those words made Hyo-iltak feel even more humiliated. To have been beaten like this in front of his own crew. At this moment, Daejin was already putting real pressure on him. Suddenly, he seized Daejin's hand and twisted it with a vicious 360-degree turn. Daejin winced in pain, his mind flashing back to the times he'd been bullied by this very group. Back then, he'd been powerless to fight back, left at their mercy, his face often marked by humiliation. But this time, he absolutely would not let them have their way. For that, no matter how grueling the training, even being forced by Hangul to do real combat, or getting beaten up, it didn't matter, as long as he could make them taste the humiliation he once endured. With a loud bang, Daejin delivered a headbutt, spraying the man's face with blood. Just as Ga-young and the others thought it was over, Ga-young's expression suddenly changed. Hyo-iltak had locked Daejin's arm in a death grip. "Bastard, let's see how long you can act tough. You've been given enough face." Daejin cried out in pain from the blow. Kim Taek and Seongbin wanted to step in, but Cha Dae-iop stopped them. He glanced at Hangul, but Hangul looked calm and unbothered, as if he didn't care at all. Under the gaze of everyone, Daejin and Hyo-iltak were locked in a standoff. Daejin's hand kept making cracking sounds. Even Hyo-iltak was surprised by Daejin at that moment. Just as Hyo-iltak was about to urge him to stop struggling, to his shock, Daejin gritted his teeth through the pain, kicked off with both feet, and flipped himself a full 180 degrees. The move left Hyo-iltak completely stunned. Daejin took the chance to wrench free his trapped arm, and before the man could react, he snapped a whip kick at his opponent's face. Right after, Daejin grabbed him by the collar and punched hard. In front of Jungran's lackeys, Daejin's fists rained down on the man's face, turning the tables in an instant. But just then, one of Jungran's boys suddenly kicked Daejin aside, and the scene erupted into chaos. Seeing this, Kim Taek and the others jumped into the fray. Daejin soon found himself surrounded by several guys from Jungran's school. At that moment, a foot suddenly lashed out, kicking one of the thugs next to Daejin. The kicked lackey stared at Hyo-iltak in confusion. "We're helping you, and you kick me?" Hyo-iltak sneered coldly, "You idiots, don't embarrass me. Did you really think I would lose to him? No one is allowed to move now. I want to deal with this man myself." Kim Taek and the others stopped their attacks as well. Hyo-iltak continued to taunt Daejin, "Don't think a bit of skill is enough to beat me." Hyo-iltak went on ridiculing Daejin, "Don't think a bit of skill is enough to beat me. Once I take you down this time, you can forget about ever using your hands to eat again." With that, he suddenly lashed out with a kick aimed at Daejin's face. Daejin hurriedly raised his arm to block. The man attacked as he sneered, "You're a disgusting cockroach by nature, I'll never let you climb over me." Daejin struck again, landing a heavy punch on the man's face. At this point, the man still didn't realize the trouble he was in. Ever since the fight began, he and this guy he once looked down on had fought to a standstill. He understood that if he couldn't defeat Daejin in front of his underlings soon, his own status would be shaken. The moment his underlings started to doubt him, he would no longer be the predator at the top. No matter how skilled a fighter he was, without followers, it all meant nothing. The man lunged at Daejin again, shouting, "Get down on the ground. Beg me for mercy." The two clashed again, their fists landing on each other's faces almost at the same time. Seeing this, Kim Taek hurriedly asked Hangul, "When did Daejin become like this? What did you do to him?" Hangul replied, "I didn't do much, just taught him the basics of fighting. He improved so quickly because he has a natural instinct for it." By now, Daejin was gradually gaining the upper hand. Punch after punch landed. But he knew he had to find a way to win, and fast. If this dragged on any longer, he might still lose. Just as his opponent lunged at him again, a glint of victory flashed in Daejin's eyes. He deftly shifted his footing, spun around, and dodged the punch. Before anyone could react, Daejin spun back, and landed a heavy blow to the man's face. His opponent's vision went dark as blood spurted from his face. Hyo Il-tak tried to retaliate, but Daejin's fists came at him again, blow after blow, until he gradually lost the ability to fight back. Finally, with an uppercut, Daejin knocked down the guy who had once bullied him for good. Staring at the fallen Hyo Il-tak, Daejin's trembling hands told him that it was finally over. Jungran's lackeys around him all wore expressions of disbelief. That guy who looked like a pushover had actually taken down their boss. Hangul and the others, seeing Daejin had won, were just as shocked as they were excited. Daejin looked at his still shaking hands, realizing he had finally defeated the one who used to bully him. Some of the underlings started to panic at the sight. "What do we do now? That guy actually took down Hyo Il-tak." Another lackey said, "There's more of us, maybe if we all go at them together, we could take them down." But when the Jungran High students looked at Hangul again, fear outweighed their courage. Hangul said, "Are you guys blind? Didn't you just see him drop your boss? If you still want to fight, you'll end up the same way." Hangul then leaned in close to Daejin and whispered, "Hey kid, don't just stand there. You're the one who beat their boss, act like it. Scare these punks a little, got it?" Then Daejin looked at the few lackeys in front of him. "You're all Hyo Il-tak's guys, right? Who said you could stare at me like that?" The underlings, hearing this, immediately scattered in fear. Daejin finally let out a sigh of relief. Hangul looked at Daejin and said, "Daejin, the reason you won this time, if you ask me, is because that guy still thought you were the loser you used to be. He lost because he could never get past his own contempt for you. It broke him inside. If he'd treated you as a real opponent from the start, your chances of winning would have been a lot lower. But anyway, congratulations on finally shaking off that moron label." Daejin just grinned foolishly at that. After the duel with Hyo Il-tak, changes began to sweep through Jungran High. With Hyo Il-tak and his gang defeated, cracks began to appear among them. And the girls who had been bullied in the group chats joined forces this time to report these troublemakers. So, Jungran High held a major disciplinary committee meeting. Daejin also took the opportunity to submit the evidence he'd gotten from Donga last time. Most of the troublemakers were suspended, and the main instigators were expelled outright. Huang Xian, Kim Dong-jin, Hyo Il-tak, and the others would probably end up in a juvenile detention center as well. However, ever since Hyo Il-tak's duel with Daejin, he had completely disappeared. In short, after Daejin cleaned up Jungran High School, the campus became quiet and peaceful. Even Na Yun started to wonder if this was still the school she once knew. Since then, Na Yun's mood had brightened considerably. Watching all this, Daejin also felt that life was finally moving in a good direction. That evening, Daejin was stunned by the scene before him. Cha Dae-iop stared at him and said solemnly, "Of course we have to do this." With a loud pop, Cha Dae-iop set off a party popper right at Daejin. There was even a cake on the table, prepared to celebrate Daejin's victory over the king of Jungran High. But the celebration lasted only a second. Cha Dae-iop immediately grabbed the cake and started devouring it, mumbling with his mouth full, "You idiot, you took down the boss of a whole school. This is such a moving moment, of course we have to commemorate it." Watching Cha Dae-iop wolf down the cake, Daejin thought speechlessly, "I bet you just wanted the cake." At that moment, Kim Taek took a piece of pork belly from the grill and handed it to Daejin. "Daejin, you really surprised me. We haven't known each other long, but I never imagined you'd grow so fast. I've got high hopes for you." Next to them, Seongbin chimed in, "With your strength now, you should be able to get your revenge, right?" Hearing this, Daejin fell into deep thought. Late that night, Daejin couldn't sleep no matter how hard he tried. He quietly slipped up to the rooftop alone. As soon as he arrived, he heard someone speak behind him. He turned to see Hangul. Hangul said to him, "You've already had your revenge and become stronger just like you wanted, but you don't seem happy. Is something still bothering you?" Daejin was silent for a moment, then slowly began to speak. Although this is the first time I've ever successfully taken revenge on someone who bullied me, and it really does feel amazing, it's a feeling I never experienced before. But at the same time, I also feel wronged. Even if I beat them as badly as I can, I still can't live a happy life with my family, nor can I have a normal school life. No matter how I get my revenge, it seems I can never go back to the way things were. That's why I feel so wronged in my heart. After listening, Hangul said, "So are you planning to just give up on revenge like that?" "No, I still want to take revenge on those guys." When Hangul heard this, he patted Daejin's head. "Why are you sighing here like everything's already over? Have you finished getting your revenge? Kid, are you afraid that once it's all done, your life will lose its purpose, and you won't know how to live like a normal person? Don't worry. After you get your revenge, I'll definitely show you what a real, lively street life is all about. Just trust me this once." Hearing these words, Daejin felt a warmth spread through his heart. Cha Dae-iop, who was listening nearby, seemed to be moved as well by their conversation. Soon, it was the next day. Daejin was getting ready to head out for his part-time job, but was stopped by Cha Dae-iop. Cha Dae-iop said, "I've already arranged for your leave. You don't have to go today." Daejin was a little stunned when he heard that. Seeing Daejin staring blankly, Cha Dae-iop quickly said, "Don't just stand there. Come with me, let's have some real fun today." And so, under Cha Dae-iop's lead, the members of the Hangul family spent a wild, carefree day together. Time flew by. Daejin had just come out of the karaoke bar, and for the first time since leaving home, he felt the happiness of family reunion. Maybe, for him now, the members of the Hangul family had truly become his real family. But just then, Daejin's fantasy was shattered by a voice from behind. He never expected that person to appear. "Have you ever been scolded by your parents for not doing well in school?" The boy before me was often beaten and scolded by his father, just because his grades weren't as good as his older brothers. Every time his father hit him, he would say, "Don't ever tell people outside that you're my son. You're such a disgrace." After every beating, his mother would help him apply medicine and say, "Your father hits you for your own good, it's because he loves you and cares about you." The boy believed his mother's words and made up his mind to study hard and try to improve. Everything he did was just to live up to his father's expectations. Hard work pays off in the end. The boy finally got a good grade. That day, holding his report card, he was full of hope that his father would praise him just as he had praised his older brother. But his father only let out a long sigh and said, "You're real brothers, so why is there such a big gap between you?" From then on, his father neither praised him nor hit him anymore. He lost all interest in the boy's studies and grades. At first, the boy thought it was wonderful not to be beaten anymore. But later, his father became completely indifferent to him. Whether it was matters at school or the boy's own troubles, his father turned a blind eye. Gradually, the boy became invisible at home. He felt lonely. He wasn't being beaten anymore, so why did it hurt even more inside? On the day he was kicked out of the house by his father, the two of them met again. What greeted him was a hard slap from his father. Daejin was stunned by this sudden act. He heard his father say coldly, "You leave home and don't even think about coming back? Do you even see me as your father? It's all because of you that I've lost face in front of the neighbors. Stop embarrassing yourself outside and come home with me now. When we get home, I'll give you a proper lesson." Hearing the man's words, Daejin's emotions flared up. After being driven out for so long, this was their reunion, not with concern, but with scolding. Daejin's heart gradually lost hope in the man. He gathered his courage and shouted angrily, "Since you've already given up on me, then just be done with it, don't try to act like my father now." The man trembled with rage at these words, then he started beating Daejin viciously, cursing as he did. "You've been out too long, huh? Think you're tough now? You dare talk to me like this? Fine. From now on, I won't care whether you live or die, do whatever you want. I never should have let your mother give birth to you." Daejin let him hit, tears streaming down his face. At that moment, someone grabbed the man's hand from behind. It was Hangul. The man sneered when he saw Hangul. "Let go of me. One look at you and I know you're no good." Hangul replied coolly, "Just as you say, I really am a thug. But if you hit him again, I won't stand by and watch. Even if you are Daejin's father, now that I'm still being polite, you'd better walk away." But the man turned and shouted at Daejin, "Daejin, is this who you're hanging around with now? You want to ruin your life? I'll give you one last chance to come home. Are you coming or not? If you don't come back today, don't ever think about stepping through the door again." After hearing this, Daejin's heart went completely cold. He said, "I feel the same as you do. I don't need that cold, lifeless home either." The man was left speechless by these words, and finally, under the gaze of the two, he turned and left. Inside, Daejin was in utter turmoil. "It's really over. I don't have a family anymore." He was still drowning in pain when Hangul came over and broke into his thoughts. Daejin instinctively pushed Hangul's hand away and demanded, "What are you doing?" Hangul replied gently, Don't grieve over losing that kind of family. You'll find your real family one day. Blood isn't everything. What matters most is the bond between hearts. At these words, Daejin finally couldn't hold back. He broke down in tears. Though all of this happened today, something inside him felt a sense of relief. Once, Daejin thought leaving home meant losing all hope, but now he had found a new family. After months of living on his own, he was slowly adjusting to his new life, and the past was gradually fading away. His daily training had become a routine part of his life. Every now and then, Kim Tech the recruit would tease him with a few jokes. Life working at the pizza shop meant Daejin still ran into troublemakers from time to time. But the new Daejin was unfazed by it all, easily tossing out anyone who tried to cause problems. He was also starting to settle into life with the leaving home squad, sometimes bickering noisily with Cha Dae-iop at home. Every afternoon, he trained with Hangul right on schedule. Hangul watched Daejin's rapid progress, always wearing a satisfied smile. But the big brother was always the big brother. No matter how fast Daejin improved, Hangul could still knock him down in a single move. Seeing Daejin sprawled on the floor, Hangul decided the time had come. Isn't it time to get started? Begin your revenge plan. The scene shifts to a hospital. The life monitor keeps ticking away. A badge hangs from the rail by the bed. On the bed lies a man clinging to life, a deep scar etched across his forehead. Suddenly, the man's bloodshot eyes snap open, and with heavy, ragged breaths, he sits up. This man is none other than Lee Doyon, the one Daejin had pushed toward the truck, the one who had barely escaped death. News of Lee Doyon's release from the hospital quickly reached his old gang of troublemaking friends. The two of them were whispering together in low voices. Lee Doyon hobbled over on his lame leg. "Didn't I tell you to call everyone from Yujin school? Why is it just the two of you?" The man wearing a mask replied, "No one else wanted to come, they're afraid of more trouble. I got beaten up by Daejin too. The rest got a good thrashing from that guy called Hangul. You'd better just let this one go." Before he could finish, Lee Doyon exploded with anger. "You expect me to just let it go after what that kid did to me? Do you all think I'm easy to push around? Cut the crap and come with me to settle the score." The man Lee Doyon grabbed looked annoyed as well, shaking off Lee Doyon's hand. Lee Doyon was flung straight to the ground, and the air turned heavy with tension. The man said coldly, "Lee Doyon, look at you now. What can you even do with that bum leg?" Lee Doyon gritted his teeth and shot back, "So what if I'm crippled? Are you all just going to leave me to go alone?" The two hurried to explain, "No, it's just that even if we went now." Before they could finish, Lee Doyon cut them off. "I knew you'd be like this. When you heard I was sick, not one of you came to see me. You guys have no loyalty." With that, he turned and left under their gaze, heading off alone to settle things with Daejin. Meanwhile, Daejin showed up at the gate of Na Yoon's school to bring her an umbrella. "Boss said it might rain after school, so he told me to bring this for you." But Na Yoon noticed that Hangul was following behind Daejin. She asked, "Why'd you come too, Hangul?" Hangul laughed and said, "Honestly, I'm just here for the free pizza at your place." Amid their playful bickering, the group left together, unaware that a man in black, wearing a hat, was trailing them. He watched them with a dark, brooding stare. This man had just learned from two people he questioned that after being defeated by Daejin, Hyo Il-tak, the boss of Jungran High, had gone missing. But he refused to believe it. He dialed Hyo Il-tak's number again, his anxiety mounting as he saw call after call had gone unanswered. So, he continued to follow in Daejin's footsteps. At that moment, Daejin and his friends happened upon a group of punks bullying someone. One thug swaggered up to Hangul and threatened, "Can't you see we're busy here? If you don't leave now, you'll regret it." Their eyes met, and when the man saw Hangul unmoved, rage flared within him and he swung his fist to strike. But with a sharp smack, he was knocked down by a single punch from Hangul. Seeing this, Daejin immediately took on the nearby thug, one uppercut, and the guy in front of him had blood gushing from his nose. Surrounded by the gang, the two began to fight back. Lee Doyon, who had been trailing behind, was stunned by the scene. He never expected them to be such fierce fighters. The gangsters finally realized something was wrong. These two were far too strong. Someone recognized Hangul, and panic set in. He grabbed his companion and they fled in a hurry. It was only then that everyone noticed the uncle standing to the side. Hangul spoke up, "Uncle, this place is dangerous. Be more careful next time, don't get mixed up with them." The uncle rushed to explain, "No, it's not like that. Those people were deliberately targeting me. They confirmed my identity first, then made their move. Someone who knows me must have put them up to it." Hangul's heart tightened at this familiar pattern. This was He Guang's usual trick. Did they come back again? Meanwhile, in a corner, Lee Doyon looked at Daejin and finally understood that he was no longer someone who could be bullied at will. With those skills, he was completely outmatched. Am I actually intimidated by him now? Cursing under his breath, Lee Doyon turned to leave. Just then, a hand landed on his shoulder. "You've got a filthy mouth. Were you cursing at us just now? Lee Doyan, completely confused, asked, what do you want? The next second, the man slapped him hard across the face. I'm here to pick a fight. So what? Hand over your wallet and phone. But Lee Doyan wouldn't be scared off so easily. He swung his fist right back. You think you can rob me? But soon enough, he was pinned to the ground after a flurry of punches and kicks. Lee Doyan finally realized that, as he was now, he was no match for them, and could only start begging for mercy. But the man looking for trouble wasn't about to let him off so easily. A half-eaten ice cream, chewed up by a dog, was thrown down in front of Lee Doyan. Eat it. Finish it in front of us and we'll let you go. Before he could react, the man grabbed Lee Doyan's head and forced it down. Just as his mouth was about to touch the ice cream, the thug was suddenly knocked to the ground. Another gangster, seeing this, immediately leapt up and charged at the attacker, but in the next second, he himself was knocked to the ground. These kinds of people are getting more and more common lately. I've already chased off 2 groups today. Hearing this familiar voice, Lee Doyan began to grow nervous. Daejin asked him, can you get up on your own? The sound of Daejin's voice sent a wave of panic through Lee Doyan's heart. There were parts of his past he never wanted to revisit. Although it didn't last long, when he was young, he had been ostracized, all because he was overweight. His classmates would often look down on him with mocking eyes, and every time, he never dared to talk back, never dared to meet their gaze. Until one day, he learned how to fight back. That moment, for the first time, he looked down at someone lying on the ground, and finally understood what it meant to take control of one's life. From then on, he swore he would never go back to the way things were. Suddenly, a voice at his ear interrupted his memories. Daejin said, let me help you up. You can take my hand. Lee Doyan looked at Daejin's outstretched hand, his body trembling, and hurried to get up and leave on his own. But because he was injured, he could only limp as he walked. Daejin caught up again and said, how about I help you walk? Lee Doyan grew even more flustered. Seeing Daejin draw closer and closer, he thought if he was found out, he'd definitely get beaten up badly. Just then, a heavy rain suddenly poured down from the sky. Dragging his wounded leg, Lee Doyan just wanted to get away from this wretched place as soon as possible. Daejin stood where he was, still looking after him, clearly worried. When Lee Doyan finally realized Daejin wasn't following him anymore, he breathed a sigh of relief, thinking to himself that once he got away, he'd definitely find someone to give that guy a good beating. He was lost in these wild thoughts when suddenly, an umbrella appeared above his head. Daejin said, you don't look so well. Here, you take this umbrella. As soon as he finished speaking, Daejin was about to hand him the umbrella, but Lee Doyan shoved him away, and walked off without a backward glance. Daejin watched his retreating figure, still a little worried. Just then, a voice both familiar and strange rang out in the rain, please, just stay away from me. The voice was soft, blurred by the sound of the rain, almost indistinct. But Daejin instinctively felt uneasy. That faint voice seemed to brush against some hidden corner deep in his memory. Even though it made him uncomfortable, Daejin still let that person walk away. And from that day on, for countless days and nights, he would regret the decision he made that day. The scene shifts. Hangul says to Daejin, lately, whether it's personal training or real combat outside, your scores have far surpassed the passing line. I hereby officially announce, you've completed your fighting course. At these words, Daejin's eyes instantly turn red with emotion. Witnessed by members of the Hangul family, he accepts the graduation gift from Hangul. Standing to the side, Kim Taek is also lost in memories of years past. Looking at Daejin, now fully dressed, Cha Dae-iop says, there's only one thing left now, we'll go together to your old Ujin school. Daejin is a bit surprised. You're all coming too? This is my own business, you don't have to follow. Besides, I need to settle this myself. But the very next second, Cha Dae-iop cuts him off. What are you talking about? How could this just be your business alone? You're part of the Hangul family too. Don't worry, we won't step in directly. If you can't handle it, just give us a sign. Daejin looks at everyone, deeply moved, and simply says, thank you, everyone. Meanwhile, just when Lee Doyan thinks everything is over, his phone suddenly rings. On the screen, Hyo Il-tak's name appears boldly. Lee Doyan answers, only to hear the voice on the other end say, awake now, Lee Doyan? In such a hurry to find me? But I think I know why. Lee Doyan shouts furiously, you're only picking up now? Do you know how much humiliation I suffered at Daejin's hands? Hyo Il-tak laughs over the phone, kid, you went to him that quickly? That guy's changed a lot, you're probably not his match anymore, are you? Lee Doyan snaps back, unconvinced, what's with the sarcasm? I've heard about you too, you lost to Daejin, got kicked out by Jungrin. You can't even call your brothers together now. What else can you do? Hyo Il-tak replies, unfazed, that dump? I haven't needed it for a long time. Just then, a scream echoes from behind Hyo Il-tak. Someone wielding a wrench is seen yanking out another person's teeth. Hearing this chilling sound, Lee Doyen asks, "What was that noise just now?" Hyo Iltak replied calmly, "I've joined an organization that's way more interesting than Jungran High now. Have you heard of Higuang? Here, as long as you pay, people will use force to solve your problems for you." Lee Doyen couldn't believe it. "Are you serious?" Hyo Iltak sneered, "Don't doubt me. My word means something in Higuang. Everyone here is hand-picked and ruthless. Besides brute force, they'll threaten, kidnap, anything you need. As long as you bring the money, this place can satisfy any request." Their conversation quietly planted the seeds for what was to come. The story moves to the next day. Daejin went to work at the pizza shop as usual. He was thinking to himself that after revenge was over, he wanted to get closer to Na Yoon. But lately, something else had been weighing on his mind. He'd learned from Hangul that the Higuang group had started operating again and could threaten the Hangul family at any moment. Everyone close to Hangul had become a potential target. Daejin knew in his heart, he had to protect those around him. As soon as Daejin arrived at the pizza shop, the first thing he saw was the boss's injured hand. He immediately asked, "Was it those Higuang guys who did this?" The boss just mumbled and wouldn't give a straight answer. After Daejin pressed him, it turned out the boss had just tripped and fallen on his own. The mood suddenly became a little awkward. After asking, Daejin went to the changing room to get ready for work. That's when he saw two people. Na Yoon was tying an apron for a blonde-haired boy. Seeing how close they were, Daejin froze. Then the blonde-haired boy walked up to Daejin, held out his hand, and said, "Hey, I heard you're a year older than me. I'll call you Hyung, and you can just call me Seong-ho." At that moment, Daejin felt a pang of discomfort. But there was nothing he could do. He still had to act as a senior, and show Seong-ho the ropes around the pizza shop. He tried especially hard to impress in front of his new junior. But Seong-ho was new to working part-time, and there were a lot of things he still wasn't good at. Seeing this, Daejin quickly told Seong-ho to go inside and took care of the mess himself, pouring a new glass of cola for a customer. Just when he thought he'd really shown the style of a good senior, in the next second he was left stunned. Na Yoon was over there comforting Seong-ho. After Na Yoon left, Seong-ho took out a pack of mild cigarettes and asked him, "Hyung, do you smoke?" So the two of them walked together to the back door of the pizza shop. Seong-ho said, "Hyung, you're really amazing." Hearing that, Daejin felt a surge of pride in his heart. He casually asked Seong-ho, "You're so young, how did you end up working here?" Seong-ho said he was short on money and was considering running away from home. Maybe there were some reasons for that. Hearing this, Daejin realized this kid had a lot on his plate. Thinking about how he'd felt jealous earlier that day seeing Na Yoon get close to Seong-ho, Daejin felt a twinge of guilt. So Daejin started to open up about himself, admitting he too had run away from home, and advised Seong-ho not to think of it as something simple. Life on the streets was full of dangers, it wasn't something you should try lightly. But he also understood that sometimes, people have no other choice. At the end of the day, I can't tell you not to run away with any real certainty. I might not be able to help much, but no matter what happens, you can always come to me. After hearing this, Seong-ho thanked Daejin. Daejin, while still urging him not to really run away, couldn't help but show off by smoking his cigarette backwards. The next day, when Daejin arrived at the convenience store, he was stunned. It had only been a day, and Seong-ho had already learned how to make pizza dough in front of everyone, and he'd finished all the remaining chores. With his handsome face, he'd even attracted a crowd of customers to the shop. The boss and Na Yoon both marveled at how good today's sales were, all thanks to Seong-ho. Na Yoon even went over and ruffled Seong-ho's hair. Seeing that, Daejin's mind was thrown into chaos, and under their gaze, he bolted out the door. Standing outside, Daejin sighed at the unpredictability of life. Just then, a hand suddenly landed on his shoulder. He heard a man, out of breath, say, "Can you help me find a place to hide? If I get caught now, I might not make it out alive." At that moment, a few tough-looking guys rushed out, and right under Daejin's nose, they split up to search. Taking advantage of the moment, the man managed to slip away. From his words, Daejin learned. This guy was a well-known member of a syndicate. Just as Daejin was wondering if the organization he mentioned might be Higuang, the man said, "Have you ever heard of the Hangul family?" Daejin was left completely stunned. The man then launched into an endless tale about how he had given Chun Gyeong a savage beating. The most ridiculous part was, he exaggerated the numbers into a 1 against 100 showdown. Daejin watched this guy, strutting around under the Hangul family name, feeling utterly speechless inside. Daejin was just about to ask Higuang why he was targeting the Hangul family, when the group of punks who had been chasing the guy in the red cap showed up again. Their leader spoke up, "So this is where you've been hiding." Before the red-capped man could react, two of the punks had him pinned to the ground and started beating him up. The leader turned to Daejin, "Who are you? Do you know this guy?" Daejin said he didn't, and casually asked if they were with Higuang. The guy shot back, "As long as you get it, now get lost." But in the very next second, Daejin landed a solid punch right to his face. The man was stunned. Is this guy nuts? Who just starts swinging like that? Daejin followed up, from now on, stop using the Hangul family's name to scam people. One of the punks nearby recognized Daejin. Isn't this the lunatic who tried to bite Chun Gyeong to death at the abandoned factory? When the leader heard he was with the Hangul family, he started to lose his nerve. Maybe we should get out of here? But another guy scoffed, what's there to be scared of? Look at him, he's the softest one, the weakest in the Hangul family. He even mocked the whole Hangul family, saying they were all useless cowards. Hearing this, Daejin's anger flared. Before the guy could finish his sentence, Daejin landed a left hook, hitting him square in the face. The man went down instantly. You idiots, are you tired of living? The two remaining punks, seeing this, charged at Daejin. But Daejin, moving lightly on his feet, easily dodged both of their attacks. The next instant, a leg came flying at Daejin. He quickly blocked with his arms, then sent the attacker flying with a powerful kick. Right after, he landed a heavy punch on the other punk's face. The downed punks finally realized they were no match for Daejin, and hurriedly started begging for mercy. Off to the side, the man in the red cap was frozen with fear at the sight. He scrambled up, trying to make his escape, but before he could get far, Daejin called out to stop him. Even Daejin found it strange himself. He had originally thought that the man in the red cap was being hunted by Higuang because he was impersonating a member of the Hangul family. But just now, those people had said they weren't here to catch him for that reason. So, why exactly are you being chased by Higuang's men? If you don't want to pay the price for pretending to be one of us, you'd better tell the truth. The man in the red cap replied, actually, I'm one of Higuang's people myself. As soon as he said this, Daejin immediately grew wary, ready to make a move. The man quickly explained that, in fact, he'd been betrayed by Higuang. Ever since Chun Gyeong went missing, the local Higuang organization had changed its way of doing things. They no longer went around collecting protection money from every shop like before. Now, Higuang took on all sorts of jobs for money, handling dirty work for others. Anything the underworld could offer, they'd do it. As for why he was betrayed by Higuang, it was all because of that man. Daejin glanced over and recognized him. Isn't that the middle-aged man who'd been beaten up earlier? The man in the red cap asked in surprise, you know him? Daejin nodded, saying he'd seen him being chased by Higuang and had stepped in to help. The man in the red cap gritted his teeth. It's probably because of him. He's my dad, and he's also the district pharmacist here. As the district chief's son, he'd run away from home and joined Higuang. He'd thought he was going to live the good life, but only after witnessing Higuang's crimes firsthand did he realize how cruel the organization truly was. Just as he was growing disillusioned with Higuang, he found out someone had paid Higuang to threaten his father with violence. And during their investigation, they discovered he was the district chief's son. Higuang decided to use him as a hostage to threaten his father. He'd thought they were family, but Higuang turned on him in an instant. Since he was already under their watch, he decided to steal the payment meant for Higuang and go on the run. Daejin looked at him and asked, isn't your dad in serious danger now? The man insisted he didn't care, but his face betrayed a worry he couldn't hide. So, Daejin said to this impatient guy that when it came to fathers, he didn't really know what to say either. But when it came to family, that was something he could understand. He spoke earnestly, only those who truly care about you, who value you, are worth protecting with your life. The man in the red hat immediately frowned and retorted, so you're telling me I should risk my life fighting Higuang for that old stick in the mud? He's never cared about me. Daejin explained, actually, your dad isn't the way you think he is. Since you left home, he's been looking for you. The reason he didn't recognize you is because the photo he has looks a bit different from how you look now. But I can tell you for sure, your dad is really worried about you. He's been desperately searching. He even asked me, if I found you, to tell you he's sorry. Hearing this, the man in the red hat burst into tears. If he'd known things were like this, he would never have run away from home, and he wouldn't have become a target for Higuang's people. Daejin looked at him and found it a little ironic. Both people he'd met over the last couple of days, one was planning to run away from home, and the other already regretted it. He patted the man on the shoulder and said, don't worry, I'll help you. The scene shifts. Chun Gyeong was glaring fiercely at the Higuang men, gritting his teeth. Just because I lost once, you're kicking me out of Higuang? He was still complaining, when suddenly a hand reached from behind and slammed him to the ground. It was Bae Gangrak, a Higuang officer. Before Chun Gyeong could explain, Bae Gangrak spoke. Do you know how much we've lost because of you? I warned you before not to make a scene. This time, too, it was you who provoked the Hangul family, and that's why things went south. Chun Gyeong refused to back down, threatening that if they kicked him out, he'd spill all of Higuang's secrets. But the next second, Bae Gangrak knocked him out with a single punch. Chun Gyeong, you've crossed the line. If you want to betray us, you can die. With that, he ordered his men to finish Chun Gyeong off. At that moment, another Higuang officer quietly warned him, "You'd better be careful, if you slip up, we're all in trouble." But Bei Gangrak only laughed. "You don't seem too worried yourself, do you? Weren't you the one in favor of wiping out the Hangul family?" The man with glasses nodded. "Of course. I saw with my own eyes how they threatened Higuang. Besides, we just got the order, it's time to deal with the Hangul family." However, he still felt puzzled and asked Bei Gangrak, "Why are you against taking action?" Bei Gangrak replied calmly, "I just think it's not worth it to take them out directly. We can test them one more time. If we really want to make a move, we can do it any time. And they still don't know that I've already planted an undercover agent in their ranks." Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the pizza shop. Daejin is introducing Seong-ho to In-hoon, whom he met earlier today. In-hoon, having heard from Daejin about Seong-ho's desire to run away from home, immediately tries to dissuade him. "You'd better not do that. The outside world isn't what you think, it's just hardship out there." He even points at Daejin and says, "Was it this guy who told you that you could just leave home if you're tired? That's because he's from the Hangul family. They're not like us, they never bully anyone. But most of the kids who run away around here end up as thugs." But then, changing his tone, he says seriously, "Still, if you really want to run away, you might as well join Higuang." Daejin is dumbfounded and immediately starts arguing with In-hoon. "What kind of nonsense are you spouting?" In-hoon retorts, "You've never been on the streets, so you don't get it. If you want to run away, joining Higuang is the only way to have a decent life." At that moment, Seong-ho interrupts them. "Is that really the only option?" In-hoon turns to Seong-ho and asks, "Why do you want to run away from home anyway?" Seong-ho lowers his voice and says that he once had a warm family, but his mother died in an accident, and his father fell into a deep depression. Still, his father did his best to make him happy, and even remarried to give him a complete family. At first, his stepmother was kind to him, treating him like her own son. But after his little sister was born, everything changed. He became the unnecessary one in the family, sometimes even getting hit by his stepmother, who also drove a wedge between him and his father. He had wanted to talk things out with his dad, but seeing how hard his father worked, and how he only seemed truly happy when he was with his wife and daughter, he didn't want to ruin that happiness, so he decided to leave home. Seong-ho thought, maybe if he wasn't around, the family could finally be truly harmonious. Daejin and In-hoon both fell silent, realizing it's hard to offer advice when you haven't experienced someone else's pain. Although Daejin himself had also run away from home, he knew that standing in front of Seong-ho, his words didn't really carry much weight. Still, he spoke up, "If your father truly cares about you, he definitely wouldn't want you to leave. Don't just think about your dad, you have to look out for yourself too." In-hoon nodded as well. "Daejin's right. If things don't get any better, I've got some money stashed away. I can help you rent a place when the time comes." After hearing the two of them, Seong-ho lowered his head in gratitude. Then he asked In-hoon, "You mentioned what happened with your dad earlier. What do you plan to do about it?" In-hoon thought for a moment. "I haven't decided yet. Maybe I'll just get into a fight with Higuang." Daejin, meanwhile, was troubled. Should we talk it over with Hangul and the others? But in the next second, Seong-ho suddenly suggested, "Why don't we go find the client and ask him to cancel the job?" Both of them were stunned. As evening fell, the three of them prepared to go their separate ways. In-hoon asked Daejin why he was helping him. Daejin simply said, "Now that we're all just getting by on the street, what's the point of drawing lines between us? Besides, I think you're both good people." Hearing this, the two of them exchanged knowing smiles. In-hoon suddenly threw an arm around Daejin and exclaimed, "Daejin, you really are a good guy." With the mood lightened, Daejin left. But he had no idea that one of them was reporting to Higuang Organization's officer, Bei Gangrak. "Hey, it's me. From what I've seen, Daejin's just a soft-hearted guy. Should I keep watching him?" Bei Gangrak replied, "Keep an eye on him for a while. If he turns out to be useless, get rid of him." Trying to help Seong-ho and In-hoon, Daejin took the initiative to seek out members of the Hangul family and ask them for help. The next moment, he was greeted by Cha Dae-iop's furious outburst, "Are you out of your mind? You think we're some kind of justice warriors?" Seong-bin also tried to reason with Daejin, "You need to get it straight. Them running away from home isn't the same as those struggling shopkeepers around here." Ga-young began to share her own experiences. She said that Daejin didn't really understand this neighborhood yet. "You ran away from home and joined the Hangul family, but a lot of the runaways around here are dangerous people. The first runaway group I joined almost sold me to a nightclub. Luckily, I was quick enough to escape, and that's how I met the Hangul family." Daejin still felt that the two guys he'd met didn't seem like bad people. Hangul said, "Maybe you're right, but on this street, the only people we can trust are ourselves." That night, Daejin thought back on his conversation with Hangul and the others, understanding that they were looking out for him. But Daejin was soft-hearted, and still wanted to help those two. The next day, he brought In-hoon and Seong-ho with him, and together they tracked down the guy who had hired Higuang to attack In-hoon's father. The man was not only In Hwan's father's colleague but also an influential figure in the district. The group was discussing how to get him to withdraw his order. Just then, the man walked into a nightclub. Daejin was fretting about how to get inside, when, in the next moment and to the shock of both Daejin and Seong-ho, In Hwan pulled out several fake IDs, an essential tool for any runaway. They made their way into the club with no trouble and began searching for the Mediterranean drug woman. In another private room, a Mediterranean-looking man had his arms around two girls, his face full of pleasure. Suddenly, one of the girls didn't finish the drink he handed her. The man slapped her across the face, leaving her cheek flushed red. His anger only grew, and he kicked all the women out of the room. Daejin and his friends happened to witness the scene. From inside the room, they heard the man bellow, "Go get your manager right now." From the women, Daejin and his crew learned that this was the man they were looking for. The man was still cursing nonstop inside, when Daejin and his group pushed open the door and walked in. The furious man saw them and shouted, "Who the hell are you punks? Get out of here." In Hwan fixed his gaze on the man. "I know you hired Higuang to get someone to rough up my dad. If you don't call it off right now, I'll make this public." The man sneered in disdain. He was a district big shot here, why would he be scared of some rookie kid? He shot back, "Are you Higuang's enemies, or did Jung Byung-il hire you? Although, I doubt that guy could come up with something like this." Just as the words left his mouth, In Hwan couldn't hold back any longer and grabbed the man's collar in one swift motion. Before he could throw a punch, a shout suddenly rang out from outside the private room. The nightclub's manager, Mr. Park, had arrived. When the man saw Mr. Park, he hurriedly shook off In Hwan's hand and called for him to bring his men and deal with Daejin and the others. Mr. Park came in flanked by several tough-looking subordinates, all of them with a menacing air. In Hwan and Seong-ho were so frightened they trembled, whispering to each other, trying to come up with a plan. But before they could react, Mr. Park swung his fist, and with a loud smack, he was the one who got knocked down. At that moment, Daejin stepped in front of the two. "Get behind me." The two of them asked Daejin anxiously, "Are you sure about this?" Daejin answered with steely resolve, "A man never says he's not up for it." Then he squared up, ready to fight. Mr. Park's men helped him up, and from their mouths, he learned that Daejin's group had snuck in with fake IDs. Mr. Park was, in fact, a pervert. To force women to pay off their father's debts, he actually made them entertain countless guests a day. If a guest rubbed him the wrong way, he beat them half to death. He never expected to be taken down by some young punk today, which sent him into a rage. He immediately barked at his men, "Take that brat down and drag him over here." Daejin now faced two street thugs coming at him from both sides, defending himself while looking for an opening. Seizing a brief chance, he landed a solid jab right on the man's face. The other thug, seeing Daejin fighting as if he had nothing to lose, quickly raised his arms to block. After all, these were seasoned nightclub bouncers, their counterattacks were swift. One of them threw a straight punch at Daejin, which he blocked with his forearm. They fought back and forth, neither side gaining the upper hand. Daejin took the opportunity to stomp on his opponent's foot, readying his fist for another punch. But with a clang, Mr. Park kicked Daejin hard, sending him crashing onto the table with a heavy thud. Not missing a beat, Mr. Park raised his dress shoe and kicked at Daejin once more with full force. Daejin saw stars from the blow, and the thugs pinned him down, then smashed a liquor bottle in their hands. Mr. Park grabbed half the bottle and swung it straight at Daejin's face. Only then did Daejin realize he'd let his guard down. But just then, the bottle was knocked out of the man's hand, and the thug pinning Daejin was dropped by a punch from Seong-ho. Seong-ho stepped in front of Daejin. "If it's a fight you want, bring it on." Seeing this, In Hwan immediately joined Seong-ho's side as well, and in an instant, the standoff became a 3-on-3. But Daejin shoved the two of them aside and said, "You two haven't even been in a fight before. Go take one guy and try him out, the other two are mine." The air was thick with tension, and a fight was about to break out. Manager Park was the first to strike, kicking at Daejin, but Daejin dodged out of the way just in time. He knew that fighting two at once would be tough, but it was clear the other side underestimated him. The less seriously they took him, the better his chances became. Daejin seized an opening and ducked aside, landing an uppercut straight into the face of the man in front of him. Seeing his lackey go down, Manager Park realized he couldn't afford to be careless. The next second, Daejin struck out again, but this time Manager Park blocked the blow. His opponent counterattacked even faster, landing a punch that made Daejin spit out a mouthful of saliva. Manager Park also noticed that Daejin kept aiming for his chin, so he quickly shielded himself with his arm. But the difference in strength let Manager Park land another left punch on Daejin. Daejin used the chance to close the distance, waiting for a chance to strike back. Their fists flew almost at the same time, but Daejin suddenly switched tactics, smashing a punch into Manager Park's stomach. The man's eyes rolled back as he doubled over, coughing up spit. Without missing a beat, Daejin unleashed a flurry of straight punches, catching his opponent off guard and knocking him to the ground. Daejin quickly glanced over at In-hwan. In-hwan's face was full of shock. Seong-ho had already taken down his opponent and was putting on an innocent act. Daejin was surprised too. This kid, whether at a part-time job or in a fight, always seemed to nail it on the first try. They immediately surrounded the bald man and began pressing him for answers. Suddenly, Manager Park, who had been knocked down, scrambled up again, grabbing a broken bottle and lunging at them. Luckily, Seong-ho pushed Daejin out of the way in time, but ended up getting stabbed by the bottle himself. Daejin struck back at once, landing a punch on Manager Park's face and knocking him out for good. Only then did Daejin realize he was mostly unharmed, but in the very next moment, terror flashed in both their eyes. Blood was trickling down Seong-ho's arm, drop by drop. Daejin saw a broken bottle sticking out of Seong-ho's back, and the next thing he knew, Seong-ho collapsed to the floor with a loud crash. In-hwan was frozen in shock on the spot. Daejin hurriedly snapped him out of it and quickly told him to take Seong-ho to the hospital. Meanwhile, he grabbed the bald man and continued to interrogate him. A few hours later, Daejin sat at the hospital, looking at Seong-ho lying on the bed and asked how he was. Seong-ho just said, "The wound hurts a bit, that's all." Daejin looked at Seong-ho and asked, "It was so dangerous just now, why did you shield me?" Seong-ho answered honestly, "To be honest, I can't really explain it. I've always felt I could barely take care of myself, let alone help anyone else. But this time, my body just rushed forward without thinking." After a brief silence, the two of them left the hospital together. Daejin said to In-hwan, "The medical bills must be pretty steep this time, huh?" In-hwan replied with a smile, "Don't worry, the money comes from the client's deposit. There's no need to fret about it." At that moment, In-hwan brought up the man from the private room. "What did you do with him?" Daejin answered, "I got him to talk. Turns out, your dad misappropriated the district council's budget and got caught. That guy only hired Hee-gwang to send a warning to your dad. He also said that if we want to cancel the job, we'll have to meet with someone from Hee-gwang. We'll need to go together." Both of them understood that this matter was far from simple. To be safe, Daejin had even secured evidence of the man's embezzlement. After hearing all this, In-hwan said, "Daejin, I should handle this myself. I don't want to drag you all into it." But Daejin replied firmly, "We've come this far already. You'll just have to trust me to the end." At this moment, Daejin had no idea that Hangul was hiding in a nearby corner, quietly observing his every move. The story shifts to the following night at the club. Hee-gwang executive Han Jongman arrives. He walks up to a door. Inside, lying there, is the man Daejin knocked down yesterday. At this point, Manager Park begins to brief Han Jongman. On the other end of the line, a man says, "These people are too soft-hearted. Maybe that's the Hangul family's weakness." Han Jongman asks, "So what do you plan to do about Daejin?" Bae Gangrak replies, "Hee-gwang has no need for someone like him. He seems to be waiting for a big fish to take the bait." Meanwhile, Daejin, In-hwan, and the bald man arrive at the designated spot. Seeing that they've been taken to the wilderness, In-hwan grows wary, and demands to know if the man is up to something. The man shakes off his hand. "You have evidence of my embezzlement. There's nowhere for me to run. But you have to keep your word. Once I cancel the job, you destroy the evidence." The group arrived at the designated location. Daejin and In-hwan watched from a hidden spot. Suddenly, a man appeared, mud caked on his shoes, a shovel slung in his hand, standing right in front of the bald man. The bald man was so startled he sat down at once. The man spoke, "Officer, we meet again." Watching from the sidelines, Daejin felt a crushing pressure and just wanted to leave as soon as the bald man canceled the job. Bae Gangrak said to the bald man, "Sorry I'm late. I had some other business to take care of. I was going to send someone else to handle this, but this time, the person I need to deal with is important to me, so I decided to come myself." Then he asked about the bald man's business. "I heard you want to cancel the job?" The bald man replied, "Yes, I think the warning is enough. There's no need to go further." Bae Gangrak replied coolly, "Fine. As long as you pay the rest of the money." The bald man hesitated, "But isn't the job cancelled? Why do I still have to pay?" But remembering that Daejin still held evidence against him, he nodded in agreement. Unexpectedly, Bae Gangrak continued, "Actually, besides that district official, others know about your embezzlement, too." The bald man was shocked and pressed him, "What do you want? Are you threatening me?" Bae Gangrak replied indifferently, "Think what you like. I'm just here to make you a deal. As long as you give us a cut of your embezzled money on a regular basis, we'll take care of things for you, be your hands and feet." The bald man understood at last. "You want protection money? But what about my embezzlement? There are still others who know. If this gets out, I'm finished." Bae Gangrak sneered, "From now on, besides us, no third party will live to know about it. You may have cancelled the job, but we're still going to take care of Young Byung-chul, and the guy threatening you with the embezzlement evidence." Daejin and In-hoon hadn't even had time to react before a group of men surrounded them. They had no idea they'd already walked right into Bae Gangrak's trap. Bae Gangrak ordered, "Beat these two rats until they can only talk, nothing else." At once, a swarm of lackeys on motorcycles charged forward. Daejin hurriedly shoved In-hoon aside. Facing a crowd of adversaries, Daejin could only grit his teeth and take them head on. In-hoon didn't even last 3 minutes before being taken down by 2 of their henchmen. Daejin was surrounded and could only fight back amidst the chaos. His eyes were sharp and his hands quick. He snatched up a stone from the ground and hurled it hard at a rider charging in the front. Right after, he grabbed a fallen iron rod and swung it fiercely at the tire of another motorcycle. Before the thug could get back on his feet, Daejin kicked him square in the face, then immediately pulled back to open up some distance. Taking advantage of the moment, Daejin dashed towards the bald man, hoping to threaten his way out. But just then, a shovel suddenly flew across and landed right in front of him. Bae Gangrak strode toward Daejin. "Daejin from the Hangul family, you've got some skills. I'd planned to let my men handle you, but it looks like I'll have to do it myself." Staring at the man before him, Daejin felt the pressure spike in an instant. At this moment, the aura radiating from this man was on a completely different level from any opponent Daejin had faced before. He knew full well that if he lost now, it wouldn't just be him, his companions would be finished, too. Before Daejin could figure out a plan, Bae Gangrak's fist was already swinging toward him. Daejin tried to block with his arm, but in the next second, he was sent flying by a punch, crashing into a tree. As he was knocked through the air, Daejin realized just how much stronger this man was than him. This guy was even tougher than Chun Gyeong. Before Daejin could get back on his feet, Bae Gangrak delivered another heavy blow, aiming for his head. Daejin twisted to dodge, but with a sharp crack, the fist slammed hard into his leg instead. His leg fractured, and the pain made him scream out loud. Bae Gangrak grabbed him by the hair, dragging him forward step by step. Up ahead, a bonfire blazed. Bae Gangrak spoke, "Everything your Hangul family has done, I'm going to pay you back for, one by one. And those burns on Chun Gyeong's face, every time I see him it pains me, so I'm taking it out on you." Firelight flickered across his face, and Daejin's survival instinct suddenly erupted in his mind. Before Bae Gangrak could react, he snatched a burning log from the fire, and hurled it viciously at Bae Gangrak, seizing the chance to lunge for the nearby shovel. Daejin grabbed the shovel in one swift motion. "I can't just go down like this." The sound of metal clashing rang out as the two locked eyes. To Daejin's shock, Bae Gangrak blocked the shovel strike with his bare hands, and, under Daejin's stunned gaze, split the shovel in two with just his hands. Then, without missing a beat, he landed a punch on Daejin's face. With a clang, Daejin collapsed to the ground. Bae Gangrak looked at the fallen Daejin, a bit surprised at the willpower he showed in the face of death. He had intended to finish Daejin off then and there, but now he'd changed his mind. "I'll give you a chance. Join Higuang. Of course, you don't really have a choice right now, and you're not getting in straight away. You'll have to prove yourself first." As he spoke, he signaled to one of his men, who dragged a man out of the trunk, and threw him down in front of Daejin. Then, a shovel clattered to the ground. Before Daejin could react, Bae Gangrak said coldly, "Bury him." Daejin's heart skipped a beat. Right before him was a matter of life and death. The man on the ground turned his face, and Daejin realized it was Manager Park, the one who'd stabbed Seong-ho into the hospital. Bae Gangrak added, "This guy betrayed Higuang and was caught dealing under the table. If you take care of him, you and your friend walk away alive. Otherwise, you know what happens." Daejin wrestled with himself, then raised the shovel, but with a loud bang, he slammed it down in front of the man instead. Daejin, in the end, chose kindness. He couldn't bring himself to lose his conscience over this. Right then, with a sharp crack, Bae Gangrak knocked Daejin out with a punch. Pain followed in waves, cold sweeping over his body, and the taste of earth filled his mouth. Daejin woke up in a pile of dirt. He saw 3 henchmen methodically shoveling dirt onto him. "Is this really how I'm going to die? There's still so much I haven't done." Just then, the little thugs suddenly dropped one after another. Hangul appeared. "Daejin, aren't you happy to see me?" Hangul pulled Daejin out, and Daejin looked at him like a man reborn. But at that moment, the other henchmen noticed something was wrong and rushed over. One of them grabbed a shovel and lunged at Hangul. In the next second, Hangul caught his weapon, leaving him helpless. Ever kissed the bottom of a shoe? With that, he kicked the thug square in the face. There was a thunderous crash, and the thug collapsed, motionless. The gang members nearby started to panic. Why does this guy look so much like Hangul? Before they could react, Hangul had already charged in like a wild tiger. With another powerful kick, he sent another thug sprawling. He shouted loudly, "I am Hangul." Immediately, Hangul launched his fierce assault. One of the thugs was so terrified he was stunned. He didn't even have time to beg for mercy before Hangul's flying kick knocked him to the ground. Just like that, Hangul took care of the thugs with ease. Daejin said gratefully, Hangul, I'm so happy to see you. At that moment, In-hwan, holding his mouth, stared at Hangul like a crazed fan. Hangul. Daejin looked speechlessly at In-hwan. This guy had just crawled out of a pit, and he still had so much energy. Daejin immediately asked, Hangul, how did you find us here? Hangul replied, lately you've been acting all secretive, doing weird things, so I decided to follow you quietly. Of course, it's not because I had nothing better to do. First, I took care of the lookouts in the mountains, but then you guys were nowhere to be seen. Later, I heard the sound of a motorcycle and followed it all the way here. Then Hangul asked Daejin, what exactly are you doing here? Daejin pointed to In-hwan. His dad is in real danger right now. I'm here to help him. Then he asked, Hangul, where did that big guy, the Higuang officer, and the district leader go? Did you beat them? Hangul looked puzzled. I didn't see anyone else when I got here. Daejin immediately grabbed one of the thugs on the ground. Where did your officer and the district leader go? The thug replied, I don't know either. He just ordered us to bury you guys, and then they drove away. He struggled and begged, let me go, please. I was just following Bae Gangrak's orders. When he heard Bae Gangrak's name, Hangul's expression changed. Now things were getting complicated. Hangul shoved Daejin aside and pointed at the thug. Listen up. When you go back, you tell Bae Gangrak exactly what I say. You really did bury Daejin alive, just like you were told. And, today, you never saw me. The little underling, terrified, stammered, if Bae Gangrak finds out, I'm finished. No sooner had he spoken than Hangul tossed him straight into the pit. So what you're saying is, you're only afraid of Bae Gangrak, not me. With Daejin and In-hwan staring in shock, Hangul effortlessly took care of everything before him. The scene shifted. As they descended the mountain, In-hwan clung to Hangul, snapping photo after photo with a cheerful click, then excitedly asked Hangul to sign his arm, acting every bit the starstruck fan. Just then, Daejin spoke up, brother, if I want to save his father, I have to defeat Bae Gangrak. I know I'm being bold, but, can you help me? In-hwan immediately interjected, no, we can't drag Hangul into this too. Maybe I can handle it on my own. Hangul replied coolly, oh, really? Then, taking the opportunity, he gently pulled Daejin away. With a stern face, Hangul said to Daejin, don't provoke Bae Gangrak again, and stay out of In-hwan's affairs. For now, Bae Gangrak thinks you've both disappeared. Daejin looked puzzled. Brother, why? Someone like that is nothing to you, right? Hangul answered calmly, I can't touch Bae Gangrak. If I do, it's no longer a personal matter. Some things aren't as simple as you think. This is for everyone's sake. Remember, this world doesn't care about your compassion. Daejin fell silent for a moment, then asked, then why did you help me back then? What makes me different from In-hwan? Hangul was momentarily at a loss for words, so he simply turned away, feigning indifference. Do as you like. But I told you, I won't get involved again. With that, he walked off, hands clasped behind his back. The next day, Daejin stood alone on the balcony, pondering how to defeat Bae Gangrak. But when he thought of their vast difference in strength, he still felt powerless. He racked his brain, how did Bae Gangrak manage to find them? They had always been watching the movements of the key personnel in the restricted area. Just then, his phone suddenly rang. It was Seong-ho calling. Daejin asked how he was feeling. Seong-ho brought up that he'd heard from In-hwan about their run-in with a dangerous guy in the mountains, and how it nearly ended badly. Daejin nodded. Yeah, he was even more dangerous than I expected. Seong-ho, you should stay out of this. But Seong-ho insisted, but I want to help In-hwan Hyung. Just then, a voice cut into Daejin's call. Kim Taek walked over and asked, Daejin, who are you talking to? Daejin quickly muttered under his breath and hung up the phone. He then smiled and said, just chatting with a coworker, that's all. Kim Taek's expression darkened. Is that so? Suddenly, he swung a fist at Daejin. Daejin was caught off guard, stunned by the blow, unable to react at all. Kim Taek shook his bandaged arm. I heard from Hangul Hyung, you want to fight a Higuang officer. Officers are a whole different league from your average Higuang. If you want to be qualified to take on a Higuang officer, you'd better beat me first, even with my injured arm. Daejin was still reeling from shock, when another voice cut in, no, that's not enough. Before you can challenge a Higuang officer, you'll have to get through all of us first.